Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to the special meeting, because it's a Tuesday, of the Board of Selectmen on November 13th at 5 o'clock. First item on the agenda is the First Selectmen's report, and under that I have the Sustainable Connecticut Award presentation, and we're waiting for John Gorham, so we'll hold a few minutes and I'll just get going on the rest of it. I read in this morning's newspaper about Amity High School students speaking out at a Board of Education meeting last night about incidences of anti-Semitic and other forms of hate speech they have experienced in our community and our schools. I am heartbroken to hear their firsthand reports of a rise in such intolerant behavior. At the same time, I'm very proud of these young people for speaking up. The first step is to shine a light on the problem, and the next step will be for Amity Board of Education and the school administration and faculty to take actions appropriate to meet this challenge. I will state firmly, there is no place for anti-Semitism or any other type of intolerance in any community. Hate will not find a home in Woodbridge. I assure all residents that I will do everything necessary to uphold our community's values and our equal rights to be free from harassment and bias incidents. We will send a strong message that our community does not accept behavior that harms, intimidates, or targets anyone. I speak as your first selectman to say, we will not tolerate intolerance. Now for the rest of my first selectman's report, I will keep it very brief. Since our last Board of Selectmen meeting, I attended on October 12th a tour of the Darling House barn. Also a meeting with the DOT regarding Exit 59 updates. I met with Steve Miller regarding economic development opportunities in our business district. On the 19th, I met with members of the Economic Development Commission, and then later that day met with members of the Massaro Farm regarding extension of the town's lease. More on that to follow. On the 20th, I attended the Halloween Hoot at Beecher. On the 24th, attended the monthly SCROG meeting, and on the 28th, with David Lober, Dr. Lober, the 50th anniversary Boy Scouts Harvest Luncheon, and also on that day I was a judge at the Pup Fest contest held by the Woodbridge Dog Park Cooperative. On the 30th, I went to the CCM convention, and Sheila will have more details on that report. We attended some interesting meetings along with Tony and Terry Gilbertson. On the 31st, I attended the annual truck retreat at the Firehouse. On the 5th of this month, I attended the Town Plan and Zoning meeting regarding updates to our zoning regs. I know Joe Crisco was there as well. On the 10th, this past weekend, I attended a lovely night at the Tavern Night at the Darling House, lots of fun. And on the 12th, which was yesterday, I spoke at the Beecher and the town's Veteran Day ceremonies. And that's it. I also have a statement that if it's okay, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to read as well from the superintendent of schools. I talked to Terry about it, and I can share copies with you, or if you'd like me to read it, it's up to you. But I think it's important that the community knows that we're taking this incident very seriously. Dear Amity community, the Amity Board of Education and the Amity School District were shocked and saddened by fears and concerns reported by the students and community members about the anti-Semitic behaviors that have expressed in both school and the community. The students feel unsafe because of these hurtful and hateful acts against them and their community. The Amity School District will not tolerate this type of harassment and will investigate and take disciplinary action against students who demonstrate unacceptable behavior. We will also cooperate and coordinate with the local police department in some of these investigations. The district will take a leadership role in partnering with the community, including religious leaders, elected officials, advocacy groups such as the Anti-Defamation League, state and federal officials, youth groups, and other people of goodwill in a comprehensive effort to address this issue in our schools and our community. The most critical members of this partnership are the students, families, and staff of our schools. We sincerely welcome their involvement. Our goal is to make the Amity schools and community the inclusive, tolerant, and safe community we all demand it should become. Again, so I have copies for all you guys if you want to just do that. Thank you. And John Gorham is not here yet, or he's here, yay! Hi, John, come on up. And of course, Commissioner Rob Clee, come on up. I thought you were already up. This is just for you guys to have comments.
Then we also have Mark from our sustainability committee.
Thank you.
Also
should we introduce everyone again, or you did? We're good?
I think.
Okay, good. Just for our TV audience, thank you. This is what we did.
I know. And I'm here.
You guys did.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, these guys did.
Yes, they did it. And Sheila.
Sheila, yeah.
Getting the points.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rob Cleed, the Commissioner of Connecticut's Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, but more importantly tonight, I'm also a Woodbridge resident, for those who didn't know that. I'm also a member of the Sustainable CT Board of Directors, and that's actually the capacity that I'm here in tonight, and to congratulate and recognize Woodbridge, my hometown and yours, as a Sustainable CT Bronze Certified Community. A little bit of a background here for those who don't know that Sustainable CT is a voluntary program that's really meant to inspire and accelerate and recognize sustainability actions by Connecticut towns and cities. We are just completing the Sustainable CT's first year, and we're very excited that we're not excited that only 22, but we're excited that 22 municipalities have achieved certification, and I'm excited that Woodbridge is one of those.
Yay.
Yes, you should. That is a worthy, of giving yourselves a round of applause. And what it is a recognition of is really a lot of hard work by so many people here in town and around town. Municipal leaders, staff, volunteers who are an amazing part of this. You completed actions totaling over 200 points in a broad range of sustainability categories that included enhancing your local economy, protecting, preserving land and natural resources, developing and fostering those cultural ecosystems that make places great places to live, your efforts on planning, on transportation, your physical infrastructure and your operations, your public services, your housing, and on equity and inclusion. And those are really those really multifaceted elements that make for a place that people love living and working, and as a resident, I love living and working and being in this community. So congratulations to you all.
Thank you.
You have this very nice plaque, which has actually been sustainably designed. It can go inside or outside. It is theoretically weatherproof, so you can find a good place to put it and display it around Town Hall.
And there are, you may note, 2 more spots.
Yes.
So we have more opportunities to get bronze. No, but we did bronze. We have to get silver and gold.
There is no gold yet.
Whoa.
So we haven't even established as part of Sustainable CT what gold is. But there are, I think, only 5 communities that achieved a silver in this first go around. But you're in a very select company around the state, and what is really great for the rest of the state and why I'm a part of this organization is that your examples here in Woodbridge are now categorized and cataloged on the Sustainable CT website, and people can go and see and look at what Woodbridge did, and hopefully, well, we could do that in my town in Simsbury or in Glastonbury or any of the berries around the state to take your best practices and see if they translate. And for Woodbridge, you can look and see, well, what did Hartford do to be a silver? Maybe we want to look and see if some of the things that they did and where we can borrow or steal good ideas from others. And but again, I want to close I can pass it over to Sheila. We have from the Sustainable CT, there's some swag. There are sustainable water bottles, which is good to reduce our use of plastic water bottles. We have a bag of those for folks who participated and were sort of champions of the program at Woodbridge. But I want to end by saying that it's inspiring the work that so many people in this community did to make this possible, and a huge hearty congratulations. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you again.
We take a,
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
a brief recess and we'll take a photograph.
Okay.
I'm gonna do that and ask you.
Sure.
Sure. With the board. With our Bill loves his
Selectmen
plants.
together.
You gotta hold this.
Let's get Commissioner Clea right in the center here. Get you somewhere here. All right, good. We're gonna get in tight now. Yeah. No awkward.
Newspaper.
So get behind the camera so I don't.
Thank you. Thanks, Bettina. Okay. Let's put this someplace safe.
A lot of BTUs in there. Put it in the fire.
It's really heavy.
Right. Can I give this, let's pass that down to somebody who will protect it? And I'll probably knock it off. You're a riot, Alice, a regular riot. Okay. Okay, whoops. Are we good? Ready to go, Pua? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 2, I will introduce Superintendent Bob Gilbert. He has a facility update and an enrollment projection. Thank you, Bob. Welcome.
Thank you, First Selectman. Never know if this is on or off. I guess it's on. I can hear it's on. So good evening, everyone.
I forgot to talk about something. I had an intro to you. It's one of those days. Thank you. I just wanted to let the Board of Selectmen know, I'm going to appoint additional members to the Ad hoc Beecher Renovation Review Committee. I thought you should know ahead of time, but things happen. 2 of the members have resigned or moved, so the problem is it was one person, Andy Esposito, all by himself, and I thought it'd be good if we had a couple new people, because he's doing a yeoman's job. As you know, back in January, I appointed a small ad hoc committee to advise the Board of Selectmen regarding the issues that have occurred at Beecher Road School post-renovation, beginning with the pipe freeze incident last winter and continuing with the high humidity incident and the pool dehumidification issues late this summer and up to the present. Andy is the sole member remaining of the original committee, so I'd like to add the following members to assist Andy in continuing and finalizing the work of the committee. Claire Coleman, who is a member of the Woodbridge Board of Ed and chair of the Woodbridge Board of Ed's Facilities Committee, and Jeff Atwood, who's a Beecher parent, and his family are also members of the Woodbridge Aquatic Club. He has a professional background as a mechanical engineer, so I think he'll bring he's a good member to join. And Sheila McCrevin from the staff is going to serve on the original town building committee and will continue with this ad hoc. So, given that, I will now introduce Bob. Thank you. So hopefully we'll have more folks.
Thank you.
Poor Andy, one person.
That's good. I'm sure
Thank
he'll
you.
be glad he will not be lonely. That's good.
Before I forget, I want to acknowledge Margaret. We have the chairman of the Board of Education behind her. She showed up, so thank you for coming. And
Sure we are.
other members of Beecher
Staff.
are here too. Stacy and Janie. Thank
Sure.
you.
Thanks. So good evening, everybody. Good
I'll
to see
stop
all of you.
talking now.
I have a few general things to talk about, and then I'll speak to those items that are also bulleted on the agenda. I also want to echo Beth's comments about the seriousness of what took place in Amity that she spoke to. We spoke to staff today about this at the end of the school day and also sent out information to the staff and faculty earlier in the day as well. And our thoughts are definitely with the families and students that have been impacted, some who have siblings at Beecher. I do want you to know that we do take seriously this area, what's gone on, also from a proactive nature. Before this horrific event or events took place that we've just recently heard about, the Beecher administration had been communicating with ADL already. Every few years, we try to make sure that's part of what we offer in terms of assisting our students instructionally, in training, from what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and we believe that's a very important thing from the very early formative years. We had already been working at dates to have ADL come in, and then, of course, this happened. So we have are starting to accelerate our efforts to try to arrange this to take place, and what we were doing even earlier, and perhaps even expanding it to more grades and more students depending upon what they do offer. So just know that we look at that from a proactive standpoint in many aspects of what we do in the school, and we certainly like to use the ADL resource and the organization that does such a great job of that. We also agree there's no place for hate, intolerance, and serious behaviors, certainly at our school as well. So Beth, thank you for sharing what you shared, and we echo that. Last month I spoke to you. The month of October was just getting going, so I just want to give some thanks and accolades. There was a fabulous, successful Halloween hoot. We have an amazing PTO who again ran this. It's not an easy thing to run, and so I just want to recognize the PTO. A great family day, great family fun event. Over $20,000 raised, and again, just a great success and a great day. I'd also like to publicly thank an amazing Woodbridge Fire Department that we have here. Once again, planning and hosting another truck or treat, which it's my third opportunity to experience that. I'm glad it was a little warmer this year, because when it's cold out there, it's not fun passing out candy for a couple hours in the cold. But I'd like to thank everybody in the community, those in the room, but also across the community. There's a lot of donations that get sent in, both monetarily, food, candy. It wouldn't happen, individuals and businesses alike. So thank you to everybody out there who made that such a great day and a great evening and a safe evening for the students of our school district. And I know, based on the numbers, they come from all around. It's not just Woodbridge kids who are there. There's kids from all over. I would also like to mention that we had a very, very important Veterans Day yesterday at the school. I'm really glad the school opens on Veterans Day here, because we take advantage of the opportunity to help our kids instructionally understand what Veterans Day is all about. We bring everybody together as a school family. We invite as many veterans as we can possibly invite to the school, whether they be parents, grandparents, family members, town residents, whoever that might be. I'm sure we miss some, but we do everything we can to open our doors up and to honor and recognize those veterans in the school in a full school assembly of really a family, is a school family opportunity for us to get together and do something very special. Our veterans feel very, very I think blessed by that event each year, and it was really just again a great pleasure to have that opportunity yesterday. So for all the veterans out there, thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for those who were able to participate. And First Selectman, thank you very much for being there as well. I'm going to talk about budget news a little bit. We submitted our FY20 Woodbridge Beecher capital budget to the Board of Ed recently. It was approved by the board with a couple of modifications. And I'd like to thank a few folks. I'd like to thank members of the Board of Selectmen, also members of the Board of Finance and Board of Education, for those who were able to make it that day on October 22nd to actually walk around the entire grounds, to walk inside the building, to actually let that capital budget come to life, because I think that was an important thing for us to see what's on paper and what it actually looks like in reality. So we thank you for spending a good chunk of that evening with us, and we'll be talking more about that at our capital budget presentation, which is coming up in a few weeks. In terms of our current operating budget for FY19, I talked about a deficit last month. We continue to run a deficit. Our special education deficit was $110,000 last month. It's down a little bit to $103,000. As you might remember, about half of that deficit is really due to the town's reduction of our budget last May, when $50,000 was earmarked to be reduced and captured in another place if it was needed. So, so there's really no change. There's a slight dip or a slight reduction in our special ed deficit from last month to this month. Our total deficit, which includes the special education portion, is up a bit. It was $172K last month. It's now at $205. This is due in large part to the various charges that we have recently incurred. Part of that is the Van Zelm study, but also recently different pool parts for the Dectron dehumidification unit, and cleaning and things like that. So we continue to incur a number of things like that that are really bringing that deficit in total up a bit. So we continue to monitor that. I know there'll be some opportunities for the town to talk with us and about, you know, where do those charges actually belong? Do they belong totally with the school, totally with the town, or somewhere in between? Certainly this is an unusual year for those kinds of costs. So that leads me to the facilities update and the enrollment, which are parts of the agenda tonight. So two parts of my facilities report I'd like to give to you. In terms of the Van Zelm engineering study that we spoke about back in September, as you might remember, that was approved back in September to take a really close look at the HVAC system in our building, which was part of the building project. I was in touch with the chief engineer about this over the weekend, and he has indicated that he will be sharing a report with us the middle of next week. So we anticipate getting that report. I would anticipate that report's going to have recommendations. As any report like that would be, it will be reviewed by both town and Board of Ed, and I would anticipate that a next step in that might be how do we move forward on those things, and certainly finding out what the cost repercussions might be. In terms of the other part of the facilities update on our pool, as you know, this has been a very, very difficult time, and we want to say thank you for the patience of all the swimmers in town, the Woodbridge Aquatic Club, and all those others who use the facility. This has taken a lot longer than we expected, but there has been an extreme number of meetings and a lot of coordination between town and school, and it still has not been an easy process. Parts that were needed for the Dectron dehumidification and circulation machine were delayed because they were not available. They were finally delivered. They were delivered and installed and balanced in the last week. The balancing work that was done, it was an identification that a further adjustment needed to be made to get the unit properly balanced so it really could be tested to ensure that it was working properly. The challenge that we had was getting both the installer of the bearings and the balancer here at the same time. That has been one of the greatest challenges because they come from two different companies. We do have a date for this Monday for them to be on site, for that to be adjusted, and for us then to test the actual equipment for a period of days, a few days, and to make sure it's working correctly. One of the things we have all agreed on is that we want to make sure that we get this equipment running properly before we have people get back into the pool, because we don't want to have it operate and have another problem and then have to have them leave again and find alternate places. So the scenario right now is we are having the work done on Monday for the balancer and the installer to come together. There'll be a period of testing. There also now is going to also be a period of cleaning the pool deck area and the vents, because with moisture, humidity, and all of that, there has been some mold that has been found. And that does not surprise anybody, but it needs to be cleaned. It needs to be cleaned thoroughly. We want to make sure it's a very clean and a very healthy environment. So after the work that goes on Monday, there'll be a period of testing the equipment. The equipment works fine. We will then bring the cleaners in for the pool deck area, the vents, and then finally we will turn the equipment back on, and our local QVHD sanitarian will come and do the final check before we reopen the pool. Again, I'm going to say thank you very much for the patience of all those who are swimmers, those who are in this room or who are watching on camera. We know this has been more complicated and longer than we anticipated. My final part of my report is about enrollment. Our current enrollment at Beach Road School is 847.
If you don't mind, could I just...
Absolutely, we can stop right there.
Does anyone have any questions regarding the facility update, the pool, or the what he's had?
When I took a tour and went down to the pool, I noticed that the fans were not operative, and I asked about that, and they said they haven't been working for years. I always remember those fans operating when my kids went to the pool, and I think that contributed to the air circulation and reduced the humidity. Do you know anything about that, whether they're not functioning or whether they're just turned off?
So I think, Dave, my understanding of that is at a time with the previous equipment, that would have been an integral part of the circulation in that room. The new system, when it's operating, and when it's operating properly, does not require that because of the capabilities of that system. So that is my understanding of why those fans were no longer an integral part of what goes on in that room.
Okay.
I know.
The results of the Van Selm report, is that to?
So it's coming middle of next week. So we're expecting at that point. I'm sorry. So your question
I'm just
would
curious
be
as to whether or not that's see what there's been a lot of discussion in regard to accountability and just exactly what repercussions there might be in terms of
Sure.
recovery of some of the expense that has
Absolutely.
been expended.
Good question. I think our process and our outlook on this has been all along. We want to get things fixed as soon as we can, so people can use the facility. Determine, and from this report, I think what we're looking at is we want to hear the report, which will help us to make a determination. And Jerry will be a key person in this as to what we would be doing to go back to the original installers, designers, engineers, overseers, in terms of whether there's anything to gain back from that.
But it is realistic that that report will contain that type of information. That's the expectation.
I don't exactly know what that report's going to look like, except for the fact that I think it would be it may be pretty obvious from parts of the report that it may talk about things that were never planned in the building project. So here are things we recommend to do because they were never part of it. Or here are things, I'm speculating now, may not actually happen. Here are things that need to be done differently or should have been more equipment, less equipment, different sizes. There's all kinds of possibilities. So I think, and we'll have the opportunity to ask questions and to press on those kinds of things to know whether, where we can go with that. I don't know what that report's actually going to look like. So stay tuned on that. And I think what you're saying is something that we're all thinking about as we move in that direction.
We have a question from the audience, and usually we don't interact, but it's okay. If you have a quick one, it's okay.
Hi, I'm Julie.
You have to introduce yourself. Come on up to the,
Yeah, sure.
please.
Hi, I'm Julie Shea. I'm the president of the Woodbridge Aquatic Club, and I'm just hoping that we have been out of the water at Beach Road School for probably for the past 4 weeks at least. And I just want to share with you guys that, this had been a hardship for us because, again, in the previous years, we actually pay for the usage of the pool as a club, and we pay for the upgrade, and we're so interested in keeping the pool in the best condition it can be. And, we're a little disappointed that this was not done sort of in the summertime where things could be easy, and this is sort of now dragging on because we had ended up having to rent pool all over the state. And I'm hoping that maybe we can get this coordinated because now we're talking about Thanksgiving and beyond, which is I don't think we're going to have any members left because it's really been hard. There's no pool rental available after Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. High school is going to be done with the swimming. There'll be a time where I just cannot. My coach just said that we're renting Ansonia Pool, we're renting Wesleyan Pool, we're renting Albertus Magnus Pool. We're sending people all over the state. I don't know if there's a better way, and if I can help with coordinating the time to have this done, the cleaning to be done, so that at least we can have a drop dead date of after Thanksgiving, because our program just is not sustainable. Because this is what we're trying to prevent. So I'm hoping that if there's any way,
we're all just doing our best. It's just so hard, and I feel so bad. It's just.
And so I just want to see if even
We'll
the
try.
cleaning part. I know that you want to make everything, but if we can, I don't know how many days they need to have the cleaning to be done.
The cleaning should take about 2 days once they're able to clean what
Again, then we'll talk about Thanksgiving, and then people are not working on Friday or Saturday. I'm just trying to think in my head. Now we're moving into 2 weeks beyond Thanksgiving. Our program is just not sustainable in the sense that I'm hoping that we all can work together to get this moving quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you so
All
much.
right.
I would just say, Julia, and we understand, and we wish this was over and done with as well. Beth and Tony, who are up there, and we've spent more time together about the pool than we ever dreamed about
I
spending
think
about the
so,
pool.
yep.
And so I guess what I'd say is, we understand what you've had to go through, and we're sorry that's happened. It's been more complicated than we'd ever dreamed of, because you're counting on people to come in and keep timelines, and we have everybody lined up to do what we need to do. We just need to have it happen and fall into place at this point, without any other bumps in the road. So
It's clear to everybody who's involved in getting this done that there is an urgency at this point.
Okay.
Is it, that's the case?
Yep.
So thank you for that. As I just roll over into an enrollment, our current enrollment is 847, which is, we've pretty much stayed the same for the last few months since school started. We only have 3 students since we began in September. I think the enrollment report that I sent over to the town leadership, I think it's been shared with selectmen and finance, and I would just, I know the presentation tonight also that we hear in a little bit is going to have a little bit about enrollment and a lot of other facts and figures and other kinds of things. I do want to just hit the highlights of the enrollment projections that Dr. Peter Prouda has provided to us. He has provided to us for the last several years. We know that our current enrollment of 847, he's expecting that will look at like 870 next year, so 23 more students than we have now, even to next year. But he's looking at a projected growth by the year 2028 of 975 students, which is 130 students over what we have now. What I will say is that his projections last year were underscored. I mean, we actually had more students move in than he would have anticipated. So the rate of growth was even greater than he would have projected last year. We're certainly hoping that that's not the case as we move forward in the next few years. What I will say, though, I think some of the information you'll see tonight, while it might be a year older than the information I'm giving you right now, this is going to not just impact the number of staff, but it's going to impact how space is used, or the lack of space that we have in terms of programs, and how programs will no longer have a space. So there's definitely a lot of implications to a place where parents are looking to move to. So it's a good news, bad news thing. It's a good news is people like coming here. I mean, they find they're coming here for lots of reasons, and one of those is the schools. And the challenging part is the budgetary aspect and the space and how we plan for that. So that ends my report. I don't know if you have any questions on enrollment. I don't want to, the enrollment, I think I've hit the highlights really. What are we looking at for next year, and what are we looking at over a long period of time?
Anyone have any?
Just a quick question. With special ed being such a big part of the expense, is there any correlation in terms of, like, you have that enrollment, but it's not necessarily a stable line, if you will, because depending on how much special ed there is there any statistics or any projections on that? So
there's a little bit of correlation there. Is that while we've been going, while the total enrollment's been going up, so is the percentage of students in special education. Right. We've gone from 9 to 10 to 11%, and close to 12% of our total population. So it's a higher percentage of a larger number. So that is bearing out with more needs. And quite honestly, just like we added a 0.5 special education teacher this past year in our budget, there's going to be a need for looking at that area as well as we move into the next operating budget proposal.
Looking at the figures here in one of the graphs, going back to 1970, you had 1,091 students, and you had over 1,000 students for 2 years, and then you had another peak, 98 and 2000, where you had 995 students. How did you handle that volume?
Well, one of my predecessors had to handle it. I'm not sure who it was, but what I can say is I'm fully aware from what I've heard is that there were portable classrooms outside. Mm-hmm. We may not have had all of the programs that we have now, so there may have been a few programs such as Spanish that may not have had both teachers in Spanish like we have now. But I do think that portable classrooms was one of the factors in terms of how that space was handled. And I think the other part of that was that there may not have been as many special education teachers at that time, so not as many need for special education rooms because the population was a little smaller in regards to identified students. I would also say that just looking at how we do business differently now, one might say, well, add a few portables, okay, but we have such a very high premium placed on security, and the way we have added security to the building, to take a look at how you would add outbuildings and security, it would be a disconnect in terms of safety and security for those who are not part of the regular building. So, but Dave, I think to answer your question, I think portable classrooms was the answer at that point. In terms of handling most of that.
South.
71 was south. The south part of the building was built 71, I believe. All right, thanks.
Talk soon. Item 3 on the agenda is the old firehouse update, and I would like to provide a brief recap of the past discussions regarding use of the old firehouse. As you remember, there had been a committee appointed by First Selectman Ed Sheehy in 2007, when shortly after the firehouse had a fire in 2006. It was known as the Cruff Committee, the committee to recommend uses for the former firehouse. I asked my staff to go through those documents, and we found the following description that was given then by Fire Chief Esposito. Quote, when the new fire station building committee was given the charge to build a new facility of 20,000 square feet, it was understood that the 5,000 square feet that was removed from the original plan could be found at the old firehouse. After a review over the past month, he reported that the fire department will need approximately 3,000 square feet for storage of extra FD supplies and equipment. This figure does not include space to store the antique fire truck. End quote. Since that time, with the planning underway for a shed at the firehouse, I've had a meeting with Fire Chief Aaliyah Alexiata to discuss the process by which we will work out the details of what will be needed to be stored where and when. This will be a moving target, as construction work is planned both at the old firehouse and to construct the shed at the new firehouse. Aaliyah pledged his commission's assistance to help ensure this planning goes smoothly, and he's going to. When I met with him last week, he assured me he's going to have a meeting with the members of the fire department to do a space needs assessment as to what could possibly go where. So that's pending. As for recreation program space, after an inventory and assessment of age and condition, we're going to move. We hope to move the existing fitness center into Bay 3. I have spoken with a member of the commission who's here tonight, Dwight Rowland, and also Rec Director John Adamovich, and they're okay with this, I think, but it has to go to the commission, obviously. It's our decision, but they're fine with that. That will allow us to complete the renovation of Bay 2 as a multi-use program, space that can accommodate activities of not only the rec department, but also the library and other departments, such as human services and training needs for all town departments as well. I believe this new shared use of community space will accommodate the needs of our town and its people, now and for the years to come. As far as Bay 1, right now the plan is to put the antique fire truck in there, and the other space will be determined. Tony Genovese met with John Adamovich, and subsequent to that I met with Dwight Rowland, I just told you that, in his role as on the Rec Commission, to be sure we clearly communicated the plan that is taking shape with regard to rec use of the old firehouse. I'm pleased that these discussions are going smoothly, and I want to thank everyone involved for working collaboratively with us as we seek to balance all the needs involved in the planning for this project. Now, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about if you guys want to reach consensus on this plan, or maybe you want to do your financials first. It's up to you.
So we presented the financials last month. There's an extra copy in your package. The idea here is that if a use is determined for the building, we could, modify the existing plans to perhaps take advantage of the fact that we know what's going to be in each bay, and make some modifications for that. For instance, there's some work would be done in Bay 3, but not necessarily in Bay 2 if that's not for fitness equipment. So there would be some electrical work we wouldn't have to do. There's some other things that we could benefit from if a use is more clearly defined.
I do want to add that the Amity Board of Education was given a lease agreement, and unfortunately, due to a lengthy meeting that I guess ended up at 11:30. They were not able to get to it last night because of other issues that came on their agenda. So unfortunately, we don't have the lease agreement, but I believe they were going to discuss it and vote on it last night. So unfortunately, I think that's going to have to be postponed now for us in terms of that part of it.
And our
Were
bond
there numbers in there? Were there numbers in the agreement? Were there
that's
projected numbers?
It's one area we're just still discussing. Yes. We did discuss with, and our bond counsel has prepared documentation should we decide to go that route. That was the other charge from last month.
Right.
Yeah.
I think at this point, we can't really vote to do anything 100%, but if there's consensus from the board, perhaps we could, because we're going to have to go back to our architects, depending on the use.
Right.
And also probably get an extension on the steep grant,
Right.
which we think we can do.
Right.
And it's just a bunch of dominoes that have to
Right.
sort of happen. But I wanted to just keep you updated. We had a different plan for this evening to kind of go forward with this a little bit more, but we don't have the lease agreement yet from Amity, the transition program. So if you guys are prepared to come up with a consensus, or why don't we talk amongst ourselves, or how we feel about it?
Based on what we initially discussed as in regard to the Board of Education utilizing the space, it seemed as if there was going to be a favorable payback in regard to utilizing that space for that purpose.
Right.
So from my perspective, if that's still on the table and it's more a matter of just crossing the T's and dotting the I's and coming up with the numbers, but if the numbers don't bear that out, then obviously that changes everything. In other words, if the lease amount is not sufficient to, it's going to be a 20-year payback, then obviously that's a different conversation. But from what I understand so far, everything is still favorable.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I would be interested in everyone's opinion about the use needs down below. Bay 2, Bay 3, if you think.
So we have a $500,000 grant that has to be spent, right?
Right.
We lose it.
Oh, we have, yeah.
Do you think we can get that extended? And what would the period of extension typically be? Do you have any idea?
It's typically tied to a timeline that you present to them with the
With a
realistic
construction
timeline.
plan?
Right.
So that,
Right. So if you have, plans or you're on a path forward and you estimate the timeline, construction, all that.
so the 500, then the total,
It's around 2 million.
2 million, 1.9 or 2 million?
Yeah, it's about 2 million total costs with a little over 2 million.
Because all our discussions have been along the line that Mika just laid out, that we wanted to try to amortize the payment of that with the use of that upstairs.
Right.
The
Right.
steep grant is 500,000 of that, and then the remaining insurance proceeds are about a little under $200,000. So
And then the bond is
About
1.2 or something?
1.4.
1.4, yeah.
So,
Which if we went with if the Amity thing came through, perhaps that lease agreement could take care of.
Yeah,
well,
I
that
present
helps
cash
that
flow.
bonding
Yeah.
a lot, that brings
Yeah.
that bonding down.
I present
Exactly.
the
So this
Payback.
antique, I'm all for antiques and all, but what's the purpose of this antique fire truck?
I wouldn't speak for them completely. I know that they use it for parades and it's used for funerals. And beyond that,
And it has to be stored in a certain way to maintain it?
I guess so.
Yes.
Yeah, we could have the fire chief
I'd
come
like
back and
to, I'd
go
like
over
to
it.
have some of the details on that.
Yeah, we could get that.
I mean, to
If
me,
we have a member of the fire department here this evening, if you want to talk about it, John.
It's part of the history of the town of Woodbridge's fire department. It's one of the first trucks ever used. And it's the first truck we ever had. We restored it. It's in perfect shape. It's ready, and it's part of the history of Woodbridge.
Okay.
It's in
And does it
the,
have to be stored in a certain way, John, to maintain it,
Yes.
heated and so
It has to
forth?
be heated,
Right.
controlled heat.
before they repaired it, it was in a garage and it was a mess. And they spent a lot of time, and a member of the department kind of held it, but because there wasn't anywhere to put it when they were using the old firehouse. But now that we have everything out of there, and it's kind of there was one talk at one point through the Cruft Committee, I believe, to have it part of sort of an antique museum in Bay 1, where people could actually see it and create.
That's
Which
right, I just-
I'm working on that part of
I
Bay
was
1. I
just
haven't gotten there
curious.
yet. Yeah.
The other point on this, on what are the Crufts?
Cruff Committee.
Those are, those are 2008, 2007, those are pre-CCW. That's a whole other point in time in terms of the
Correct.
financing of this.
Yep, I gave you all the
town.
history, I think you got all those over the
I
last,
just
so
wanted to point that out.
we could certainly revisit uses again and start another committee, I
But
don't know.
what's it, I'm sorry, Beth. excuse
That's
me.
okay, how you feel about it, it's, you know,
What's
not
the-
my decision.
What's the
Your decision.
required timeline? If we wanted to use the steep grant in the amount of time that has initially, that's part of the grant as it stands right now, when would we have to do what?
So, as it stands right now, we would have to have all the expenditures completed and the bills paid by March 31st, I think it is.
2019,
Yeah,
That's without extension.
correct.
bills paid.
Yeah.
So.
If it has, the work has to be done, the bill has to be paid, you have to sign off on the whole process.
What's your best guess, because that's all it is in terms of the time, the appetite for Amity to rent that space for the program, the timing to seal the deal and what the numbers might be? Do you have any sense that we're on track to put something favorable together? I guess it's the same question Mika just
So
asked.
we were hopeful to have some of that for this evening, but we didn't, so hopefully for your next
I
meeting.
mean, it might be worthwhile to have even a special meeting on that or
Could.
something. If we
Yeah.
wanna move something along.
We could.
you know.
Yeah.
Right, if Amity's willing to have a meeting to do it, so. I know
I mean,
that, I think
that
there
helps,
was
that helps
enthusiasm.
this whole project a lot if we get
Yep.
somebody up on that second floor.
What's the figure? It's about 250,000 a year that it costs to outplace the students out of the district. Right.
That's what was discussed initially, but I don't know if that number has changed. I understand that it might not be that high, but
I
I don't know that
I
for
This is
sure.
all based on
remember.
But
enrollment.
I
the
can't
initial
remember.
discussions we had was 225 or 250, something
Right.
in that area.
Mhm.
So it would be in our best interest
Mhm.
to try and get that locked down for the 2019-20 school year.
Well, I think
I
that would,
don't
if we're
know
gonna
if
do a
that's
deal
gonna
with
happen.
them, it has to be a long-term
Yep.
lease if it's
It
gonna
would be
help us
long-term,
with
yeah.
this
I think it
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah.
It's a 20, I think a 20 year?
10
I think
to
it's gonna be a
20,
20-year lease
20
is what
years, yeah.
was gonna be presented to the Board of Education last night,
And
so.
to Beth's earlier question, as far as the first floor is concerned, everything that we had, with the exception of questions related to the antique fire truck in Bay One,
Mhm.
I don't, is there any other
What
discussion or?
what do you guys think of going
Might-
forward with that, so at least,
I think
No,
we
I
need
mean,
to
there's
do
no other
something,
way to
yeah.
replace, you
Get it
can't put
done.
it anywhere else, so that's.
I
I'm
mean,
talking
I
about
can't
Bay Two
comment
and
on
Bay
the-
Three,
the
though.
fire
What do
department,
you think about Bay Two and Bay Three in terms of those uses?
I think the focus needs to be, we have to prioritize, and I know that they said they can't do it in phases, but let's get the upstairs completed. Worry about finishing the floor in Bay Two, for the museum, if that's something, or
That would be
I'm
the
sorry, the
multi-use,
fitness
multi-use.
equipment.
Bay
Right,
Three is the big one. and
Okay,
That
so-
would be the,
Fitness.
the fitness
Right,
equipment needs
right.
a new floor,
Mhm.
and their elevator needs to be put in before
Right.
anything can be done upstairs.
Is there a pressing need to move the fitness center and move human services out of their present locations?
we're not moving human
It
services,
wouldn't be human
just the
services.
rec,
Rec,
yeah.
okay. Is there a pressing need to move rec and the fitness center out of its present location?
John?
If- My,
What do you think about that?
What I'm getting to is,
You know, I have a fitness center right now in 2 locations across the hall from each other,
yeah,
which makes it a supervisory place for safety, going back and forth, and they're too small with the rooms that they are. If you place them all in one consecutive room, Bay 3, you have one large completely fitness center together, which one supervisor could watch at all times and be there, and it could be safely locked off from the public during times when the other parts of the building are open.
right, that would be more ideal than what you have now, but what you have now is still satisfactory. The driver of this is this $500,000 steep grant.
Yep.
The question,
Well, I also think the driver is that this building we haven't used it since 2006. And, 12 years of, we need space, we need
do it.
You can't-
space, we
right.
have insurance, we
it
have,
seems as if you can't do 500 or even $691,000 worth of fix.
right, but
Right.
what I was
So-
getting to is that if we have that agreement with Amity, that would be great. If we don't have that agreement with Amity, does it make sense to bond $1.4 million to refurbish a space that has no use, and then find a use for it? I mean, that's really the point of my
The answer may be,
question.
maybe no. But
Of course
I
not,
think,
but-
I think a question that ties into that is, have we looked at, we have insurance proceeds, 200 or something like that?
Correct, yeah.
And a $500,000
Yeah.
grant, so call it 700.
Yeah.
Six, okay. 700,000. Yeah, right. But do we have any kind, at one time I know we talked about we need a boiler over there and things like that. We were gonna spend that 500 to do those type things, right?
You could.
I guess my question is, do we have any kind of a budget for the 700,000 and
We
how
do.
far that would go on Bay 1, 2, and 3?
It wouldn't get you to a point where you can actually use the building. Because a lot of the,
That's not the right answer.
because it's a lot of it's, the sprinkler system, the heating system, electrical, stuff that's involves the
Elevator.
entire building,
Elevator,
not just
Right.
one section, right?
yeah.
We can discuss it further, but it just appears that with the
The next step's the Amity question.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Amity question, if that's, if
Okay.
that's a yes, we have a definitive answer, or we have a direction to go. If it's not,
Okay,
then we
I
don't.
think we have to push that.
okay, I
Push
mean,
that.
yeah.
I mean,
Sounds like
as
I
far as
will.
the uses for the Bay, I'm okay with that.
Okay,
As am I.
You know.
okay, anybody?
I'm on board with it, but
Okay.
again, I think
It's all puzzle,
need
I
to
just
wait,
wanted to,
yeah.
kind of get consensus from you guys, and then we can certainly, Amity's clearly.
What did I just
will-
agree to?
reach out.
One bay is the antique truck.
Right,
One, Bay 3 is the move
Rec.
of the wreck.
right,
Yep, for
and
the-
Bay 2 is a multi-use, as I described it.
meeting
A,
space, like,
I will tell you exactly what we talked about. It is, let's see, multi-use program space that can accommodate activities of not only the rec department, but also the library and other departments such as human services and training needs for all town departments as well. I hope you got the letter from Mary Ellen, and did that go out?
But
Mary Ellen LaRocca and also the library, they were,
I think.
it's in the back of your packet from those two
I think
folks.
you have to realize, if you have more space, it will fill with people that we have to pay. Not to put too fine a point on it, but,
Can you explain that? What do you mean?
well, if you
People we have to pay?
expand
It's gonna
program,
increase our
if you
employee
expand
roll.
programs, you're gonna have to have people who are running those programs, which means you're gonna have more employees and a bigger payroll, potentially.
Well, you're on personnel, so you'll be ever vigilant.
Yeah,
on
right,
that.
okay, we know where that goes.
But,
I
I
show
have
up- I
heard
show
from a
up for
lot of folks that we do
yeah.
need more meeting space. So whether it's programs, whether it's meeting,
I think
Okay,
we need space.
point
in
made.
I
town.
just don't wanna sock the town with a
Point made.
$1.4 million bill, for a,
okay.
But I think what we're saying though is we're not doing that unless there's a revenue
right.
to balance
I
that
would,
out.
I would, I
I
would,
think we
I
have
would,
a
I would
consensus.
agree with that.
And I
Yeah.
think that's what
I think that's
everyone's,
fine.
okay.
Okay.
I think that's all
I
we're
think
saying.
that's fine.
Okay, okay.
I
Yeah,
just
thank
wanted to
you.
put my marker
Okay,
down there.
that's okay. That's what this is about.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. So we'll get to Amity as soon as we can and see if we can set something up quickly. I don't control that board, so we'll let them know that.
And I don't wanna belabor it, but we don't have a backup to that either. I mean, we
Good point.
We don't have.
Yep.
Cause I mean, we could look, we could search out somehow or put feelers out.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so no other action on that
Not
at
yet,
this
no.
point. We have
Okay.
consensus,
Yep,
okay?
we have consensus.
And I'll keep you posted.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We do public comment real quick?
Yeah, I would.
We're gonna start public comment
We can do like the town,
in a couple minutes. What do we wanna do?
the town
That's
clerk, and those,
something
something
Town
like
clerk's
that.
report?
Yeah, okay, we'll jump to town clerk's report, which is item 13. Everyone has in your packet a copy of the town clerk's report. I will make a motion that we approve it as presented by the town clerk. Is there a second?
12.
Second.
Number 12, sorry.
Well, yeah, well, we can do town council report too, that'll be quick.
Okay, here he is.
Get doctor's pay?
What? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the town clerk's report? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Let's do minutes real quick too, because we still have one more minute. Minutes of the October 10th, 2018 meeting. I will make a motion that we approve them as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comments, discussions, changes? Go, David.
I've been demoted again.
Okay,
How do you know?
Mr. Lober again.
Oh, Mr.
okay. Well, at least you are Mr. Lober. You're also Dr. Lober, I get
It took me
it.
a lot of
Okay.
years to get that degree.
You
Anyway,
went to
okay.
Evil Medical School,
You're
that's a
entitled
joke.
to it.
I accept
Okay.
them with that
Thank you.
comment. You're
Okay,
right.
we'll make sure that gets changed.
Exactly.
Any other discussion or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And the October 22nd special meeting, would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? That one okay for you, David?
Yeah, I dropped my
22nd.
microphone again. Yeah, that's
Oh,
fine.
no.
You can mess over there, Dave.
Well, you don't need it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, and it's now 6 o'clock, so we'll begin. Sorry, guys, it'll be quick. Public comment,
David's
thank you.
hanging. It's
Please
Dave.
remember,
David's hanging on the back.
thank you, Margaret. You do it all. When you come up, as usual, it's 2 minutes if possible, please, because we have a busy agenda this evening, and we will invite public comment at this time. Well, that went quickly.
No, no.
Thank you.
Not
Oh,
yet. Sit down.
2 minutes, my friend. Yeah, we have a huge,
Seems I haven't been here for several.
we have a huge agenda. Sheila's got her bullseye timer going.
You don't get to bank the time, Bob.
You have
No,
a
it doesn't
bullseye
work that
timer.
All
way.
right, real quick. Bob Hill, 68, you cut into my time. Okay, 68 Acorn Hill Road. Hey, just a couple quick things from our last rec meeting, just some observations on the agenda and that type of thing. So, I think you may know that the Beecher courts, tennis courts, are closed and not able to be operated because I guess there needs to be money to fix them. So that's unfortunate. Hopefully at some point we can find the money to take care of that. I know that I walked in kind of the end of it, but I kind of knew that at one point in time, the fitness center was going to Bay 2, Bay 3. Originally it was going to Bay 3, but then, God rest his soul, Bob Gregg pointed out to us in a layout it wasn't going to fit in Bay 3. So I guess we're going to have to do some creative laying out or figure out how to work this up, because when you go from 8 walls to 4 walls, and with the ADA restrictions and widths of aisles and doors and that type of thing, there'll be some challenges. So we should really lay that out. I know that I heard that.
What do you mean we?
Well, we all should, work together on
Yeah.
what that's going to be
I
in
think
terms
so.
of what the final
Yeah.
plan is for that.
I hope you guys can, with the rec commission.
I hope so
Okay,
too.
thank
We
you.
had previously worked through
We
that,
will work
but
with
it's
you,
changed
yeah.
since then, I guess.
Okay.
So, and I guess I'm not sure what's happening with Bay 2, other than I guess I heard something about additional rooms or whatever, or meeting rooms. There are additional rooms in this town that we own that we don't seem to get access to, that we probably should get access to be able to do some meetings. And I think you all can figure that out. Other thing, real quick, I'm glad to see that the skating rink is on the agenda to discuss. And Beth, you had called me about our creative solution when you're dealing with the dog park, and I thought that was a wonderful idea, and I think that works well. One thing that John had pointed out to me, I guess, if you do it as concrete, which is really what we should do, so it preserves itself and also the ice stays colder longer. The only issue is if we do decide to use it for parking in the spring, it gets a little more expensive because you got to put rebar in it. So that's something to give some thought to in terms of where we go with that. I know the pool is on the agenda, and it's kind of unfortunate that we've kind of come to the point where I think we are at this point. A lot of towns do have town pools and beaches, and I know the criteria became break even. Unfortunately, a lot of the things that were said, and Beth, I know you were in support of it, but a lot of things that were said by a number of, or some of the boards in the town really weren't helpful to the process, and really ended up being kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy to our efforts to be able to move along. We kept it alive for probably 4 or 5 years and did the best we could with it, and John and Dave Cohen and LaDonna and the staff really did the best they could to do what they could with that. It's kind of unfortunate, and I know with basically where the taxes are in the town, there's really not a whole lot of room in the town to work with that. So, and I guess the only other thing is dealing with the indoor pool. I know Bob Gilbert and his staff are dealing with that. I know we'd asked for some information in terms of the warranty. The one thing, I guess, in terms of the warranty that people may not be aware of, and I'm sure the town's looking at it, or Jerry Weiner's looking at, is the difference between the warranty that you're given with something which is express warranty versus an implied warranty. We spent the kind of money we spent repairing that building. If during regular maintenance, in terms of whatever is required, is met, there's an implied warranty that these items should last longer. We did ask to see those, but I guess we're not part of managing that part of the process. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I might have been over my 2 minutes, but.
Thank you. Anything else? And off we go. And I will introduce Cirque. Thank you for being patient. Pretty close to 6.
Right.
Just again, if you don't mind, just giving your names again, or okay, it's up to you. We have a PowerPoint.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Santee. I'm the CEO of the Connecticut Economic Resource Center. And just a little bit of history, I guess. This is our 4th appearance before the board. The first time we were here, it was to discuss how trends in data and research about your grand list could help the town in making more informed judgments about priorities. And as a result of that, we were retained to do a study of the grand list, both the expenditure side and the revenue side of the grand list. When we came to you the second time, we had created a cohort of towns which allowed us to look at your expenditures, your revenues, compared to towns that are similarly situated in the state, and some that folks in town feel you're similarly situated to, so that we could say, well, you're not really like some of those towns. So it's myth busting a little bit on some of the towns that folks compare you to. So that was the second meeting. The last time we were here, we presented you with some preliminary findings on both the expenditure side and the revenue side of the budget. At that time, we were talking about getting more granular information, particularly about the residential components of your grand list. And we since have received that information, and we've evaluated it to give you a better idea of what properties are holding their value in town, which properties are not holding their value, that might inform decision making about the types of housing that you could build in the future that might be great contributors to your grand list. So tonight we hope to present our final report to you, at least as far as this PowerPoint is concerned. And after tonight and any comments that we receive from you, we will finalize our report in written form and present that to you. So we're happy to be here once again. We've enjoyed this engagement. We think it's going to be informative as far as the future of your budget making and your finance, and we're happy to have done the work. So thank you for the opportunity. Now I'm done, and I can turn it over to Rachel, who's actually done the hard work on this, and she'll present you with the final recommendations.
Yes, and first I just want to echo Bob's comments. Thank you again to the board for having us. This has been a really exciting project, and one that we hope other towns across the state may kind of use as a model for some of their own planning purposes. Again, the objectives here, right, were to help, to assist in making the budget and planning process more data-oriented to the extent the data is available. Provide data so that Woodbridge can evaluate its performance relative to similar municipalities, as Bob talked about. And in this portion of the presentation, we'll be showing you our preliminary findings on some hypothetical budget scenarios that we modeled, so that the town can understand how some of your decisions today could impact, your future financial picture. Go ahead. So the question came up last time about district reference groups, which are groupings of the school districts within the state. So the DRGs classify public school districts based on certain socioeconomic factors. The classifications are the letters A through I, with A consisting of affluent suburban districts and I consisting of urban districts with high socioeconomic need. And so the state kind of
group school districts that, again, have similar socioeconomic characteristics. The criteria for those include median family income in the district, parents' occupations, whether they're more, kind of professional occupations or service-oriented occupations, poverty levels, total enrollment in the district, parents' educational levels, family structure, whether you have more, two-parent families, or, whether there are preponderance of single-parent families, or, children living with, grandparents or other family members. Home language, which is might be your portion of, English language learners and things like that. So Woodbridge and Region 5, the Amity School District, are both in DRG-B. The other districts in that DRG include Madison, Newtown, Orange, West Hartford, and Region 15, which includes Middlebury and Southbury, just to give you an idea.
Rachel, is it limited to that, or is that just a sampling of ones in this DRG?
I believe that's all the ones in the DRG.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so that's just background because we're going to reference it in a little bit. And then one other, quick slide, again, just to refresh your memory, the Woodbridge population by age. About 27% of the town's population as of 2016 was 19 and under. So obviously when we're talking about budget, we're going to talk a lot about schools. So that's just to refresh everyone's memory from our last presentation. So the next slide, I'll talk first about how we formulated the expense projections for the school district. When we put these projections together, we first did a baseline scenario, kind of a, if current trends continue and there are no changes, what's your financial picture going to look like in 10 years? And then off of that baseline scenario, we, modeled, okay, what if you change this element? What if you change that element? And how much different does your mill rate look in the future by making those changes? So that was kind of the approach that we took to this. So again, looking at the school district, these are the budget projections we used for the model. Superintendent Gilbert just presented some numbers that are higher than what is shown here. So the future school expenses for the Woodbridge School District, if those numbers do come to fruition, would be higher than what we'll show you tonight, but we can make those adjustments before we submit the final report. But again, they are projected to increase over the next 10 years, which will obviously impact employment over that period of time. Next slide. Oh, sorry, you got it. Thank you.
Way ahead of you.
Yay! In addition to anticipated increasing enrollment at Woodbridge School District, Woodbridge's share of the enrollment in Regional District number 5 is also forecast to increase. Although overall enrollment in Region 5 is projected to remain roughly stable, I believe Orange's enrollment is projected to go down ever so slightly. Bethany's is going to go down a little bit more, and if Woodbridge's stays the same or increases slightly, then the proportion of expenses that are going to be paid by the town of Woodbridge could increase much more significantly than your small increase in enrollment might otherwise indicate. So that's kind of what's shown here. This is the total enrollment of students for Woodbridge School District and Woodbridge's portion of Region 5. If we can look on the next slide, please. This is the percentage of the Amity budget that would likely be represented by Woodbridge, which is the orange portion in bottom. So if current enrollment trends continue, as of 2018, 2019, you're around 32% of Amity's allocation, and if that continues, current trends continue over the next 10 years, you would be up to about 35%. So your portion of the expenses would increase by a few percentage points just because of that enrollment shift. Okay, so this is the total annual budget for the Woodbridge School District, just shown here. And then on the personnel, Again, part of that is due to, you know, just typical inflation, and part of that, particularly in the later years, also includes increased staff needs based on the increased enrollment projections. Okay. And these are the projections for Woodbridge's portion of the regional school district number 5. Go ahead. And then this is the total projected educational expenses for Woodbridge's portion of the 2 school districts. As noted, you know, due to the increase in hiring, and one other factor that is different in the school districts than other areas of the budget is based on existing teacher contracts. We inflated, I'm sorry, not just teachers, all staffing. Staff salaries were projected to increase at a rate of 3% a year, where the general inflation for most expenses we projected at about 2% a year. So that's a portion of the increase, in addition to the other factors that I mentioned. Okay. All right, so this slide, hopefully you have a hard copy, you can see the numbers a little bit better, but this was our baseline budget scenario. As I mentioned, most of the expenses we projected to inflate at about 2% a year. I discussed how we formulated the school district expenses. The other exceptions were debt service. We projected based on the town's debt service schedule. Let's see, capital outlays, the bottom line, represent 2.5% of the entire expense budget. And investment income, we did a straight line of the last 3 years average. So those are the 3 exceptions. Everything else was just kind of applied a general inflation rate. The Amity overlapping debt, those payments are included in the Amity Regional School District budget. And again, this is just the baseline, you know, that we used for comparison. This is current trends continue, the town makes no other changes. This is what it might look like in about 10 years. Assuming the grand list grows at about 0.79% per year. Over 10 years, that would result in a mill rate increase of 8.37 mills, which on a $380,000 home represents about $2,200 per year in higher taxes. So that's our baseline scenario. Any questions about that thus far?
So did you factor in changes in the evaluations of those homes?
No, we didn't factor in any changes in the valuation of the homes, because if the value of the home goes up, the mill rate would go down, but the calculation in terms of the amount of additional taxes they would owe would, you know, the taxes that each individual taxpayer owes would still go up. So as to not confuse the matter, we didn't make any adjustments based on that. Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, so the first scenario that we looked at was a hypothetical reduction in state educational funding. Obviously, the state continues to face budget challenges, so we wanted to model a hypothetical decrease in the funding provided by the state to the 2 school districts. So here we modeled a 15% reduction in state educational funding, 30% reduction, and a 50% reduction. Again, just as a hypothetical scenario so that you could see how the mill rate would be impacted by that change if it were to happen. And so what we found is that a 15% reduction in both school districts would result in a 0.1 mil increase in 2020 as compared to the 2019 baseline. A 30% reduction in state funding would result in a 0.21 mil increase, and a 50% reduction would result in a 0.35 mil increase in your tax rate. Okay. All right. Another hypothetical example that we looked into was a school regionalization plan. So what we did here is we combined the total expenses and the total enrollment of Woodbridge, Orange, Bethany, and Regional School District number 5 into a hypothetical school district. That was one regionalized school district. And then we compared that school district's expenditures to other school districts in the state. So if you see the two charts on the slide, the red dot represents this hypothetical combined school district. On the left, this is enrollment as compared to educational expenses. So you see this hypothetical school district is almost right on the average curve there for how much it spends on instructional expenditures as compared to other school districts of the similar size. If you look on the right, this is administrative expenses as compared to enrollment. And that hypothetical school district is not a wild outlier, but it is at the higher end in terms of the administrative expenses per student compared to other school districts in the state. So basically what this shows us is, although your instructional expenses across the 3 towns are similar to other areas in the state, you are, in total spending more on administrative expenses than, potentially other school districts. So if we could look at the next slide.
Just in regard to the outliers that you see here, for example, is there some place in the state that has 25,000 students enrolled? Is that what that's indicating? Those
you mean to the front?
Yeah,
yeah, those would be larger, Bridgeport, New Haven, Hartford, larger school districts.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, any other questions on that? Okay. So costs and benefits of regionalization. There have been studies that shown that larger districts, it can exhibit cost inefficiencies. So a closer examination would be needed to determine whether savings from a potential regionalization plan would be achievable or not. The Hartford Foundation for Public Giving recently did a study of regionalized school districts. They determined that savings can often be found through reductions in administrative or instructional staff and their associated wages and salaries, fewer buildings to maintain, or higher volume purchasing. But costs could also increase due to increases in staff salaries due to seniority or contract negotiation, or more mid-level administrators or staff needed. So it's not necessarily a given that regionalization would save money, but the data would indicate that there is perhaps potential there that could be explored. So hypothetically, the average administrative spending per student for districts similarly sized to our hypothetical regional school district that are in DRG A or B was $1,764 per student. Orange, Woodbridge, Bethany, and Regional District number 5 together spent $2,561 per student on administrative costs. So the hypothetical savings for Woodbridge would be about $1.6 million per year, or 1.33 mils, if you were able to achieve a level of spending comparable to other districts in the state. That represents property tax savings of about $354 a year on a $380,000 home. Orange and Bethany have lower per student expenses than Woodbridge does. So therefore, if this hypothetical regional school district were to come to pass, those 2 towns have less incentive to regionalize, and their potential cost savings are lower than Woodbridge's would be. And then this is just following up on that, some selected school districts that were, again, closest in size to our hypothetical regional district, Darien, Ridgefield, Newtown, and Cheshire. As you can see, Darien's total expenditures per student were higher than the hypothetical combined district, but you have a couple of other towns up here who had lower expenditures per student. Okay. All right, any questions on that?
Just your previous slide, Orange, Bethany have much lower per student expenses than Woodbridge. Is there any insight into what's behind that?
We didn't dig any farther than that into the data. It's kind of outside the scope of our study here, but, you know, that's certainly a question that you'd want to look into if this was, you know, something that the town wanted to pursue.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next scenario that we looked at was growing the commercial, industrial, public utility portion of the grand list. Woodbridge's CIP portion is fairly small, about 6.4%. And so we just looked at what would happen if this portion of the grand list were to grow by, you know, somewhere between 2 and 5% a year over the next 10 years, and how that would impact the mill rate. So this chart, that's the chart that you're looking at. 2% growth would reduce the mill rate by 0.6 mills over 10 years, going up to, if you experienced 5% growth per year in that commercial portion, it would make a 1.33 mil difference in the mill rate over 10 years. Okay.
Do you have a sense for what the growth rate is in the other comparable towns?
No, I don't think we looked at that particularly. You know, but certainly the higher growth rates is something that's not going to happen organically. The town would need to have some kind of plan to, you know, encourage that to happen. Okay. All right. The next portion, this is the one of the charts that Bob referenced relating to residential home values and grand list. So basically, we looked at all the home sales over the last 10 years and looked at the size of the homes. This divides the homes by quartiles, so the 1,920 square foot or less, that's the, you know, 25% of homes that were the smallest that sold in the last 10 years, and going up to the, you know, bottom right-hand one is the top 25% in terms of size, square footage. And while all of the homes have trended down slightly, you'll notice the smallest homes, the 1,900 square feet or less, held their value the best. That red trend line is the flattest. The portion of homes that held their value second best were actually the largest homes, the 3,400 square feet and larger. And then the two, kind of the middle 50% of homes in terms of size experienced a much steeper decline in sales price over 10 years than did the very largest and the very smallest homes. And we did the same segmentation by number of bedrooms, you know, 1 and 2 bedrooms, 3, 4, and then 5 or more bedrooms, and had kind of the same findings. So anyway, that was kind of an interesting finding. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, just in summary. Most significant projected cost increase are, you know, educational in nature. That's not a surprise to anyone here, I'm sure. A regionalized school district could potentially reduce costs, but that's something you would need to, you know, look into in more detail to see what savings could be realized. Again, hypothetical reduction in state educational funding of 50% would impact you by about 0.35 mils. Growth in the commercial industrial portion of your grand list at 3% a year could also impact the mill rate by about 3.5 mils over 10 years. And among single family homes, the smallest and the largest homes have held their value better than the mid 50%. So that's kind of some of the most interesting things that we've found to date. Does anyone have any comments or feedback that they'd like us to consider? Yes.
Just a thought on again, getting back to the commercial industrial portion of the grand list, one of the challenges we face is our limited ability. There's a limited area, you know, geography for that type of property or those types of property. Again, in terms of comparison, in terms of how comparison, I don't know how critical the comparison will be, but where Woodbridge ranks, I guess, in that regard.
Size of
in other words, right, you said that our total is 6.4%. As compared to Orange, which I would suspect is significantly higher, or some other areas that are significantly higher, that offers a different opportunity than it would here, so you're able to do something different. I'm just wondering if we had a better understanding of that, maybe we could, when we compare ourselves, or if we try to compare ourselves, or try to go to another community, try to get some direction or some insight, what they have being significantly different, kind of You know, if there was someone with the comparable amount, with the comparable statistics to us, it would be, and they're doing something better, you know that, let me go to them and see what they're doing. As opposed to if there's a dramatic difference, it's like trying to compare home prices here to Fairfield County. It just doesn't work. You know, that type of thing there. You could talk about it all you want, but it just doesn't work. So.
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting that you brought that up because in the first portion when we presented the comparison towns and, you know, kind of showed you how Woodbridge was performing compared to other communities, this was one of the criteria that we used to select those communities, which is why towns like Orange weren't in that list. Yeah. Sorry, Bob, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I would just comment. The amount of property that is zoned commercial and industrial is one factor. What you can do on that property is the other factor. So density is an issue, and if you allow greater density in certain areas of town, that can give you a higher return on less real estate.
When you spoke about the value retention of various properties, I mean, anecdotally, and you should never use anecdotes, but anecdotally, there are people with the more expensive homes that are having their homes sit on the market. So these $500,000 plus homes are the ones that have sold. But then there's another cohort of houses which are much more than that, which are not being able to be sold. Did you look at that? Did you look at houses sitting on the market not selling?
No.
Yeah, that's the real problem in town.
Yeah, it's difficult to find data on those. I mean, you know, to say someone listed their home and it didn't sell.
Well, I mean, you can look at the realty sites and see how long a house has been listed. It's been listed for 2 years. You know, that house hasn't sold.
Yeah. The question, it is anecdotal because it doesn't give you the opportunity to compare it to other towns. We were surprised, frankly, that the higher priced homes actually held their value, because what we've seen in the couple of other towns, and very small n here, we haven't looked at a lot of towns, is that the higher value homes have also sunk in value. But yeah, it's very hard to get data so you can compare one town to the other.
So first of all, I think the report was very well done, so thank you for bringing this information to us. And I just wanted to point out one little item which I don't believe really changes the recommendations or the goals of what you're trying to achieve at. I think the information that we're looking at per pupil expenditures, we're looking at the comparison towns in the BOA region, are really looking at the audited 15-16 expenditures. And 1 year later, which is the most up-to-date audited, fully audited numbers we have, which is the 16-17 audited numbers. Actually, the way that the BOA region looks at it, Bethany has the highest per pupil at 18,432. Orange is next at 18,227. Amity's next at 18,143. And Woodbridge actually has the lowest per pupil at 17,498. So I think it does vary year to year, but just to point that out, I think that's just helpful, because ours is probably lower now because we have more students and really haven't increased staff all that much. So when you take the formula and you put it together, that's why our numbers probably went down below the other districts.
Yeah, thank you for that. The 2015-2016 was the most recent year that was available on a statewide basis. So
I don't think it really changes the overall flavor of what we're trying to reach and what we're trying to do here, but I just wanted to point that out to the board.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next steps.
Thank you very much.
It's very helpful. We're heading into budget season, so thank you.
Finally.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to item 6, which is liaison reports. Terry?
So I went to the Woodbridge Board of Ed meeting on the 15th, I believe it was, of October. Bob gave a great update. I think the only thing that I would add that the board should be aware of is the extended day program at the elementary school is experiencing an increase. They have on average about 180 students in extended day, which is the largest they've ever had, and it is a source of revenue. They've been adding new programs and getting a lot of interest, so I think that's something that we should be proud of. And the other thing is they, minor thing, but it was nice to hear they created this Buddy Bench program. Actually, they didn't create it. They purchased, they approved 2 Eagle Scout projects to build 2 Buddy Benches. And Buddy Benches, for those who aren't familiar, we looked into them when we were doing our playground. They are it's a bench where a child who is feeling lonely and left out can go and sit, and that is a sign for them that they could use some companionship. And this is becoming like a more popular movement throughout the country. So it's really nice to see that they're focusing on inclusion and they're doing this and taking a step forward. So I just thought I'd bring that up. It was nice to hear. So that was the Woodbridge Board of Ed. I did go to the Amity Board of Ed meeting last night. The public comment was, I think, probably their highest. It was over 2 hours long. And I'll be honest, I went not as a liaison last night. I went actually for public comment as one of the families that was affected. So I probably will just pass on my update.
Thank you.
Thank you. I attended 2 meetings, one with planning and zoning, and police commission meetings going on at the present time, but I did speak to the chief today and got some updates. In regards to the planning and zoning meeting on November 5th, it basically was a continuation of the public hearing on the updating of the zoning regulations. We're basically technical, nothing substantive or changes. However, it was discovered that in a previous approval for GBA requests for residential use, there was an error, and they have to correct that in the immediate future. So they are working on that. In regards to the police commission, which is meeting presently, regards to the traffic authority, there was a request by a resident for more stop signs at the intersection of 313, Route 313 and 243. There was also for a traffic study. The state denied this request and said that they would, for the stop signs, more stop signs, that they would trim, the trees in the area, et cetera, to make it, more safer. In regards to the request for improvement at Mill Haven Road and Overhill Road, there is going to be more signage, particularly referring to the children in the area. Be safe. As far as the report of the chief of police, the carport, which is a pre-construction unit, will be delivered pretty soon, perhaps this Wednesday. The chief also announced that there was a highway safety grant of $19,000, 100% reimbursement for traffic enforcement throughout the area. In regards to the to Beecher School, the state school resource officer, Beecher agreement is all set, and they're waiting for the new superintendent at Amity to finalize that. In regards to dispatch updates, the consoles have been installed, and the fire dispatch system is on hold. But also the chief stated that there are 2 positions that have to be filled, one that are vacant. One was due to a retirement, and the other was a vacancy. And that was the police commissioner report. That happened momentarily.
Thank you.
I attended the Recreation Department Commission meeting, and there was, they did work on their budget, and I do feel they're working toward trying to, again, be one of the few organizations that are trying to reduce and or retain or maintain their budget as opposed to any significant increase. There was discussion in regards to the pool and the skating rink, which you heard some comments on today, and I know are on an agenda, so I won't spend a lot of time on those, and we'll have discussions on that. There were also concerns as relates to the budget in terms of them trying to make sure they present a reasonable budget, but at the same time, there's concerns over some of the facilities and the issues in general with the pool and the tennis courts and the trails. Smith Mowry continues his work on the triathlon. There was also some discussion as relates to one of the organization's names, changing it to Wolverines in memory of one of the residents here in Woodbridge. As far as the indoor pool is concerned, there was some discussion as relates to warranties, etc., that they're hoping to get some information on, or if they're not the ones, it would be whoever's appropriate to make sure they review that and review it with Jerry at some point in time. That's about it. As far as the EDC is concerned, Betsy Agla's taking on a much more responsibility as relates to the EDC and working with the EDC on business retention, physical improvements, and just engaging the state and regional partners along with the EDC. And that meeting, I believe, is coming up this month. We haven't met this month as yet.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay, I didn't want to start. David.
Okay. There was no COOPOP meeting in October. The Library Commission is meeting tonight. So I have a report from Human Services. Construction has begun on the ramp and the restroom. The ramp excavation exposed drain pipes that need to be rerouted. Those are drain pipes draining the water off the roof. Silver Petroselli is planning to developing plans for signage, for building identification, and also for wayfinding, so it'll match the sign that's already on the other buildings. The food service pilot program needs to be extended beyond its original 6-month period due to this construction, which may result in reduced use. The suggestion was made that users of the Fitzgerald property could be informed of the availability of beverages and snacks at the cafe through advertising on the signboard at the cornfield. Free transportation of veterans, this is another pilot program, to medical appointments has been very well received. I think there are only 6 people who are using it. We would also like to thank the Rotary Club for providing Thanksgiving dinner, the fire department for providing toys, and the Boy Scouts and the Leos for efforts in the food drive and pantry. Youth services. A number of truancy cases have been identified and attributed to school anxiety. In addition to school psychological services, an anxiety support group is being started. The Living Treasure, total revenues from the Living Treasure are $21.85 from the silent auction, $6,455 from the ticket sales, $1,030 from the candy raffle, $3,225 from the ad book, bar tips and celebrity tips $1,032, table stage sponsorship $700, donations of $100 if you subtract out the expenses of $46.12. Living Treasure Award dinner netted $10,112. Okay. Can I make a comment about that thing at Amity? I mean, okay. Just for a history lesson, I was looking at some numbers today. 18 million soldiers, Allied soldiers, died in World War II fighting Nazism. Over 400,000 American soldiers died in World War II fighting Nazism. The only war that had more casualties for Americans was the Civil War, which was over 600,000. I think I think this idea that there's something appealing about Nazism is very wrong-headed. It's very un-American and very unpatriotic, and that's what I'd like to say. Okay.
No report.
Thank you. Item 7, skating service update. I'll invite John Adamovich up, and anyone else who'd like to be with him.
John Adamovich, Recreation Director. We've had a skating rink going back to 2002 over at the cornfield. It was asphalt. It was black. Every time the sun came out, it would melt it. Once we started getting cracks, the water would dissipate, go out, and then we'd have to try to refill it, and we couldn't do it. But in the beginning, when it was brand new and it came in, I just brought out some statistics. This goes back to 2013-14 when it was redone. The whole surface was refinished. We had 50 days of skating. That's over 7 weeks of skating, plus 25 nights of skating there. Skating is from usually December all the way through to March. And what happened back then was the water would melt, but it would stay in the rink, and it would refreeze overnight. Once we started getting cracks, we would lose the water. We try to bring it in, and once you try to bring in water, when there's half ice and half water, we put the water in. It's from the fire truck. The fire department tremendously helps us. They don't charge us a dime. They bring the trucks over. They run back and forth. It's, you know, we're talking 20,000 gallons of water every time you have to replace it. If we replace it once. So I was hoping that we could put this skating rink, since it's not going to be at the cornfields, and I think did everybody get their sheet? You have your sheet?
Just got them out, thank you.
Okay. Well, I gave you some information. If you see the area in pink, that's where the skating rink would go. The orange is the driveway to come into it. That area is 220 by 200. A skating rink is 85 by 200 is a regulation hockey rink, skating rink. And if we could put a skating rink in there anywhere between 85 and 100, 120 into that area, it would be absolutely perfect. There's no trees involved, no trees to be taken down. There's fill there that was brought in by the town in there to lay it out. Also, it's a dual purpose. If you take that area and use it as a skating rink, use it from December to March. And then from April to November, you use it as a parking lot. But to do that, you'd have to put in cement, and that would need rebar, so it'd be a little more expensive than what we allocated for an asphalt. But usage would be year-round, and it would relieve the tension of the parking on Pease Road and Shady Lane, which becomes a hazard. Everybody parks out there because it fills up. There's no place else to park when they have their tournaments there. And that's how tournaments raise money. And also, I just want to go back just a little bit to your question about Bay 2. And if recreation goes in there, we have a revolving account. And in that account, we bring in vendors to run programs. And we don't run a program. We figure out the price and cost of the program, divide it up amongst the students. And if it's 10 students, to break even, we would run it at 10 students. If 8 students signed up, we wouldn't run the program. But then anything after that, recreation gets a fee for every single person that the vendor has. So we get like a $20 fee. So if there's 20 kids in there, you know, that's $400 at a so we would be able to go in there and use that space and share it if it's a shared space. Basically, that's what I'm looking at. Basically, what I'm looking at, I wrote everything down here for you. I gave you the information that I could on everything that would be there. There's different size rinks we could do, and I'm hoping that this project could serve twofold. If there's any questions.
Yeah, John. I was just going to say, I think this is a great idea. Knowing the area very well, I know that there's definitely a need for parking in the spring and fall. And my only question would be, is this in the tree area, or is it before it?
Well, as you come up the driveway,
yeah,
just before when you get right to the end and you can turn into the parking lot, it's right there on your left.
So it's not the tree line area. Is still.
Oh no, the tree line is still until you. If you look at what I wrote down here, you would not be able to see this from the road.
So if the lights on say at night, the ice skating rink lights wouldn't affect the property.
Lights would be placed on the Pease Road side.
So
it's facing this way, and there's no off lighting falling off of it. That's what we did when we over here at the cornfield.
Yeah.
We put it so that it faced away from the houses, and they face towards the woods. And we only put up about 60 feet, so the light is just directly on top of the skating rink.
John, on items 2 and 3, the asphalt cost and the cement cost, is that just for the materials, or is that the total cost for the?
That was the total cost. That was the total cost of it. These are just guesstimates, or not guesstimates, but I went to a company and asked him, and he said asphalt would be about 20 to 25,000 installed. And he said if you're going to put in cement, it's going to be a little bit more expensive because if you're going to park cars on, you're going to have to put rebar and do that, and that's the total cost of what the whole project would be.
Yeah.
John, where you have 100 feet marked off there,
Yeah.
cars parked there, right?
That's the parking lot. That's the first parking lot, and from one arrow to the other arrow, that's about 17 cars.
Okay.
So if you flip over the other side, you got 17 there, you got 17 on the far end, and then you have cars that would park in the middle. So I'm figuring about 50 or 60 cars.
So I had a little different question though. So what's the buffer between that area, between the parking lot and where the rink will start? You have it shown, right?
Oh yeah, well it goes up just to there, but as you come in, you'll notice like a little island, and then the cars park there. So we would come back about 10 feet.
Okay.
We would be back about 10 feet.
10 feet from there, because my obvious question is how you stop pucks from hitting the cars.
Oh, you just have people walk there.
Oh, okay.
You know, of course.
Just something to think about.
Yeah.
If you're going to allow hockey, I don't know.
Well, we usually
because you're not contemplating boards, obviously. And,
yeah.
So
it's mostly for recreational skating, but a lot of times the older kids.
I've seen
come
them
and
play hockey over here.
Oh yeah, something like this. So we put fencing up, and we would come in 10 feet from the parking space. We have plenty of room there. I was actually there today walking. It was a little wet, but that's just from the heavy rain that came in.
You're going to have a lip around this rink to keep the water in.
Yes, it'll be a 6-inch. It'll be asphalt. It'll be asphalt, just like we have with the asphalt. It's so easy to put in and take out, and it'll last for years.
And cars can easily drive over that.
There'll be a driveway. There'll be a driveway coming in from the parking lot, coming into the thing.
Is the orange.
Where the orange is.
Yeah.
And Adam would help me put something up. We do that now. If you go there now, you'll notice that when they had the carnival, they had an asphalt coming into it, and then they put a little ramp, and you drove
kind
in.
of a ramp.
We would do the same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
At all times.
Anyone else have questions, Mika?
What's your ask on this, John? What are you looking for in terms of, are you looking for the additional dollars? What's your?
I'm looking for the additional dollars to do it in cement, to do it correctly, and to make it big enough.
We have $20,000 in the budget, right?
We have 20,000.
So
we're probably looking at 20,000.
So we'd go out to bid for this, and we'd get the pricing in, and that's John's estimate of the pricing.
The difference is what we would be considering.
Right. That's it.
I think before we go further, I think that you guys can all say how you feel about this and everything. I think we have to refer it to Town Plan and Zoning for an 824 review, and I would hope you would go to that meeting, with questions. We could submit this, and in case I have, I'm sure you will. Yes. So
I'll make a motion that we refer this plan for the skating rink to TPZ for an 824 review.
And they'll get back, and they'll get back to us as soon as they get it on the agenda. We will forward that. I think this is a great idea. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Because now it's a double purpose, and that's the best thing about it. We, get rid of 2 birds with 1 stone.
Right. Yeah.
And I'd also like to say just a little bit to Beth and everybody here like that it's wrong what's going on. At the high school and things like that, and I understand, but people have to understand that this has been going on for over 50 years, and you can't bury it, you can't hide it. I went to Amity High School. I was upset 3 years there because I was considered a flat rat. The flats of Woodbridge and Upper Woodbridge, and it was like that. And it hurt a lot, and it was wrong. And now it's about rearing its head again. It's got to stop. We've got to do something because these poor kids go to school and are afraid to go to school. For the first time in my life, after the synagogue incident that was just in the paper, I was going to 11:30 Mass here in Woodbridge. I was at the firehouse for a call. I was getting ready to go to church, and the wire went down. We couldn't go to church. But I was sitting there thinking, well, maybe I should sit in the back, or I sit in the corner, because maybe somebody will come in. For the first time in my life, we've got to address this. We can't put it on the back burner, and I hope that's what happens. And if there's any type of group or the groups that get together, I'd like to be a part of it, to be there to help.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just one real quick thing. It may have to
I think you have to come up to the mic, but just real quick.
Yeah, just relates to the skating rink. I'm assuming the skating rink is going to be referred to the land trust too, because of the.
Eventually.
Right.
We thought
Okay.
we'd go with
Just
820, right.
wanted to
We
mention
didn't want
that.
to do it at the same time, parallel, because.
Because I know they get upset when you don't tell them, and then you start moving along, and that they, as long as they understand that we're planning on going there.
Yep, thank you. Okay, thank you for that. So we'll take care of that. Thank you. Moving right along.
Beth, we have to take a vote.
Whoops. We have to vote? I
Yes.
forgot.
Vote to
Okay,
send
we
it
have a
to
first and a,
TBD.
motion, a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks, guys, keeping me honest there. Item 8, Woodbridge Outdoor Pool. Do what, John?
Yeah, someone should come up from.
Somebody should come up from either Rec or John or the pool. We're on the pool now.
Back up for the pool.
You back up. Anybody? Anyone? I'll just preface this, in your package is a sheet of paper with updated financial information, which I hope you had a chance to review.
It was,
This is related to the, department's outdoor pool operation.
it was reviewed at the rec commission meeting too, I believe, correct?
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Financials.
Financials,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. I'd like the board to try to come to some kind of consensus regarding next year's season's operation. This is another matter I discussed with Dwight in his capacity as rec commissioner. Thank you again for being here, Dwight. And Tony has discussed, this, of course, with Johnny A., but John Adamovic.
Hey, Johnny A's perfect.
It's a short, you're killing me. It's cold. John, would you like to provide any context for the financial report before we talk about it? Thank you.
Yeah, we've showed.
I joined every year, I gotta tell you.
I know, and we've showed a slow decline in the thing because certain things have to be taken care of and have to be done that warrant with the resurfacing of the pool and different things like that. And I feel that if we're going to open this pool, if we're going to reopen it up next year, all that surfacing has to be done. There's a lot of work that has to be done to bring this pool up to what the people of the town of Woodbridge would expect a pool to be. Our numbers were at like 76 members, 76 memberships, family memberships, whatever it was. And that was dropped, we were up to about 140 or 50, then we dropped again, and we dropped again, because every year we weren't sure if we were going to open, so we didn't have the time to get out there and put it in the paper, in the news, and get out there. We're always last minute doing this. And at this point, I gotta be honest, if we're not going to fund and do the pool and like this, I don't think it should be opened unless it could have been funded. We lost, I think, $54,000 this year on the recreation. That's a loss right there. I already know that many members have talked to me, and I've heard through the grapevine of different people I've talked to that their friends have joined a different club in Woodbridge and gone to a different one like this. So we're down 20 members, so we're looking at 50. So we may be looking at maybe an $80,000 to $100,000 loss if we don't get the memberships back up, plus another 100,000 or so put into the pool. My personal feelings would be, I hate to say it, because I'd love to see it open, but if we can't open it up the right way, I don't want it to open if it's not going to be the way we should have it like this. And maybe we can come back once a deal is made and the property is sold and somebody comes in and sets up another golf course, which was, when the golf course was running, that's when we were at our hottest. We had so many people there and we had so many programs under the tent, which was excellent. But without that, and if somebody comes in and then refurbishes the place and takes down the building or whatever they do, and then we could re-up the pool and start again, that would be great. And that's where I'm at.
Okay, Tony, anything on this, you wanna go over this, or anybody have any discussions about this? So now I guess I'd invite you all to talk about what you think we should do for next year.
Well, unfortunately, based on these financials and what John just laid out, the loss plus additional money to be spent to open it up the right way, and for 76 family members, now perhaps you could increase that, but at your highest, were you what, 200 or something like 150?
About 150.
150.
170 something. I think we were in the 170s.
I don't think responsibly for the taxpayers we can continue to spend that money and lose money for that type of participation at this point in time. We tried it, and everybody did a great job. And
I like to thank LaDonna. I like to thank David Cohen, who worked his butt off keeping that place going like this, and Brad Parsons, who and his crew who was there. I mean, the town put everything they had into it. They did everything to keep that heater going, the boys did the locker room, our recreational boys, did the locker rooms, they cleaned everything up, they did everything the best they could,
Yeah, no, it's no
The pool itself has
negative
to be addressed.
reflection, it's just,
Yeah, it's just what it is.
reality and it's finances and
Thank
that's
you.
my thought.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. I think it's unfortunate because there's a number of families that were really benefiting by having it, but I agree. I think, to run in a deficit like this would just be irresponsible.
Perhaps as part of a proposal for the country club, depending on what we decide, we can have a pool again. I'd like
Yes,
to continue
that's
it.
what I'm
I
hoping
think it's
for,
a
moving
wonderful
down the road
thing
that we could.
for the
put it-
townspeople to use, because I think having an outdoor pool is important, but,
Yeah.
May I ask a quick question? What is the cost for resurfacing the pool?
To drain the pool and resurface it and paint and pre-paint the whole pool was somewhere in the range of like $80,000.
thank you. Joe and Mika, any comments other than where we are?
When we discussed it last year, we were talking about the possibility of breaking even or staying there and being the reason for going forward again. I'm in the same place and we've had this discussion. It's,
Yeah, we've
from
talked
a
about it.
financial standpoint, it's difficult to validate or to justify, so. But I will say, as you said, Beth, I think it's important that we keep it in consideration as we move forward with plans, particularly for that property. If we make it recreational use, that might be a consideration that we go forward with.
Sad to say, but I agree.
Yeah, but I was only 5 numbers in the Powerball away from winning the whole thing, the big one. I would have helped you out a lot.
Still got
Agree.
Dave and Joe.
Yeah, yep. Joe said no, right? No other comment, and I'm on my way to David. I gave my opinion now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
philosophically, I hate to see services that townspeople use get cut back, and then, services and things that really don't benefit the townspeople expanded. That being said, it's really, it's really hard for me to support the pool if John is telling me that, his position is. I think the fact that we let the property around the pool deteriorate and make it less attractive, also reduce the appeal and reduce the membership. That is what it is, but hopefully the problem will be resolved.
Beth, the only other comment I make is that, as the liaison with the Rec Commission, I will say that it's a testament to the folks who are engaged here. Their rationale for doing this is simply to provide, as David said, provide the service to the residents. And they did everything they possibly could to make that happen. So, kudos and thank you, and sorry to see this.
And we're going to try to use the property. We're going to try to do recreational programs. I went over there the other day. I went over the whole property. I got a half a bushel of mushrooms I found that I know were good. I saw 2 deer, and I thought I saw like a lynx or something like that. And so I drove real slow. I was in the back like this. It's a big old fat cat. Somebody's feeding their cat really good. It's just a cat. But it'd be great hiking. It'd be great hiking. We could get out there. I was talking with Adam, and maybe we can just make sure that the paths are correct. It'd be a great hiking area for the residents.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
John, before you leave, do you see any water properties in Woodbridge that we could use as summer recreation? Orange has a lake. Bethany has a lake. Do we have anything that we could use temporarily to resolve the issue?
As swimming or
swimming or bathing?
No,
or, no,
not as swimming. I don't see anything that has a shore. We have banks, that drop off like that. And but there's programs like I did programs when I first started in recreation. I remember I can't think of his name right now, but he was with the state. We did a fishing program at Amity High School, and there's some nice ponds on that property that we could get out there and walk out there and do a recreational fishing program with the kids, because you could fish off the shore. But there's no place really where you have a beach or something like that you could do a swimming program.
Thank you.
So I understand from town council, we have to make a motion
To close it?
yeah, this season,
make a motion.
upcoming.
To close the Woodbridge,
Not to open the pool.
Not to open the pool.
Woodbridge. Make a motion to not open
right,
the
okay.
pool for 2019.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
It's always the future.
Sadness. I know, that's right. Thank you for
Never know.
that. Okay. So we'll forward that. Let's see, administrative officers, item
Okay.
9. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Take us into some happy times here.
Okay.
Sad.
The financials for the end of, through October of 2018 is about $165,000 surplus for the end of the year. Most of that surplus comes from basically two occurrences. The first is our interest income, which at this point is probably generated a surplus of about $100,000 this year. And the second is there were some position eliminations. One in the finance department was payroll clerk. The other was the library part-time bookkeeper position. So those two positions resulted in surpluses in each of those departments of $40,000 and $15,000 respectively, and the benefits associated with it. So those are sort of our major items at the moment. We do have a deficit in recycling disposal we talked about in the prior meeting. We are on our way with the scale, and that should help to generate income for to offset that. So those are sort of the highlights of the financials so far. Any questions?
That part?
Yeah.
Any questions for Tony from anyone?
Just quickly, the projected unassigned fund balance.
Yep.
At 6:30.
Yep.
And 11.2. Yeah, I mean, because we've been using a good portion of the 400,000 in the last few years.
The last couple years we haven't had to use it.
We have.
No.
Came back.
Well, Amity came back.
This past year, the fund balance was, our surplus was just a few $1,000s. We didn't have to use fund
Without
balance.
using it, including the money
Because of the money that came from Amity, correct.
Okay. I think.
If it didn't come
few
from, the
years
money didn't
before-
come from Amity, then you.
Then we would have, right. And
Correct.
I think it's a few years before, but I guess my question is, that number has grown fairly significantly in the 6 years since I've been here as a percentage.
Right.
So I think, is that from investments of that fund?
Partly.
Partly.
Yeah. And
we have an investment committee, right? Do we ever get a
the
report
investment
from
committee
them?
just does the trust funds that we have, because all the other funds are state statute driven. There's not very much we can invest in.
Not much we can.
No, there's not much. It's mostly government funds. Nothing. Yeah. So the investment committee oversees the investments in our trust funds, which are of course unrestricted investments.
Okay. And how much do we have in that fund?
There's about $4.2 million in the OPEB fund, about $350,000 in the library trust, and about $200,000 in the cemetery trust.
Okay.
So about $5 million roughly.
Thanks.
Okay.
Tony, the scale, I'm sorry.
Yes. It's on later on the agenda,
Oh, thank you.
and we can.
Saw that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Now we're moving on to tax refunds, and as soon as I get to it, I will, you have in your packet for tax refunds. Is that next? Yep. Okay. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion
Thank you.
that we
Yes.
approve refund of property taxes in the amount of $13,650.32.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Terry. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to funding requests. First funding request, it's a line item transfers. Is my in the right place here?
Yep.
Okay.
Just both.
Okay. Line item transfer number 1819-04 of the amount of $25,000.
This is the $25,000 for the Beach Road School tennis courts that was referred to earlier. So this this was originally made and approved in the capital budget, but was eliminated because we anticipated using contingency funds, which we were not able to do. So this is funding that project.
So it's 20, I'm not sure I'm understanding. It's
25.
25,000 coming from pool improvements?
Yeah, that's just a
Line item?
project we had money left over.
Okay, because I'm wondering why we're improving that pool and talking about money, and then we're taking.
No, that was
So-
from previous projects that had funds remaining.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a good question, though.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we approve line item transfer number 1819-4 of $25,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussions further? David?
No, I just wanted to know what CNR meant.
Capital and non-recurring.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, it's unanimous. Line item transfer number 1819-05 in the amount of $12,350 for funds needed for the purchase and installation of an above-ground scale for the transfer station.
So this is actually sort of a cart before a horse type of thing.
Yeah,
There's
we
two
can
of them
wait
in
till
here.
we have the, if you want.
If you want to wait until you do the bid award, I mean, that's up to you. Because that's,
No?
you don't
No?
care. Yeah.
Everybody okay?
Yeah.
All right, we'll
Does
go
it
ahead
affect
now.
the
I
amount? All right.
found one after all that. I'm sorry, thank you. Okay. So this is related to the, you want to talk
Scale.
about anything further, or the scale itself, sort of self-explanatory?
the reason why it's extra is because it has to do with the mechanism for the scale that, it's called a, give me a second here.
So this is above and beyond what we had already approved for the scale
Correct.
itself.
Right, we had $70,000 and the price is $82,000, and it has to do with the hydraulic load cell, which is a type of cell that controls the scale.
So over time, I saw that Warren recommends that. It wasn't clear to me exactly why over time that was.
It's because of it's outdoors and and checking with other towns, there's a lot of repairs that result in the fact that it's an outdoor scale and that this type of cell is constructed much differently.
So the theory is by spending it now, we
Won't have to spend it later, right? And it's a lifetime warranty, right?
When the line item transfer, it's coming from where, Tony?
There's a project to replace one of the compactors. We've done one and we're working on the other, but it can wait
So it's
till
within
next
their
year.
budget and they're just
Yeah,
moving the money to
from one
do
project to
this.
another, yeah.
So I'll make a motion, we approve line item transfer number 1819-05 in the amount of $12,350. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next item is request for funding 1819-06 in the amount of $21,000. This is for installation of monitoring wells from the removal of a diesel underground tank.
This is another item that I was gonna review later on in the.
It's up to you if you want to wait on this one.
Where did?
There,
why don't you just
I could just review it now if you want.
The one that was
There we
over
go.
here?
Yeah, basically, we removed, so there were three remaining underground fuel tanks in town. As you recall, we removed one at the center building a while back. There was the fuel oil tank for the town hall, which was not being used. There's a diesel tank for the generator at town hall, and there's one at the country club. There's also one at the school, at Beecher School, that's not used. So there's 4. So we took out the fuel tank at the center building, at the town hall, and the diesel tank that serves as the generator. The fuel tank did not have a problem. There were no contaminants. The fuel tank came out without a problem. There was, however, diesel fuel in this ground where the diesel tank was, which was for the generator. The tank was not cracked. It was due to overfilling probably over a period of years. So when we tested the soil and the, spilling, and so we would overfill it and it would spill.
But wait, so do we know how long we've been overfilling this tank?
I don't know.
Overpaying for fuel?
It's probably a little bit at each time, but
Oh.
over a period of,
It's not being used
20 years.
anymore, so at least.
So we're doing an above ground tank for
Take 'em
that.
out.
And there was just the monitoring wells, there was, the water only tested positive at the site of the tank. So we installed wells throughout the town, the property, and none of those tested positive. It was just the one test at the tank. So it's a very localized spill, and so that's what this is for.
I don't know what's the monitoring well?
Basically, what we do is with Joe Sanavasi, some of you know Joe, he's come to previous meetings. They determine the
He's
flow.
been involved for a million years because of the big spill.
The big spill down here,
way.
right?
Ever since then, we've had him for
So when there's,
consulting.
he acts as an LEP, acts as the state's agent on the site. So he came out to the site and he basically determines the flow of the groundwater and then installs monitoring wells strategically so that you can test the groundwater away from the site to see if it's in the groundwater. It was not. It was just at the site of the actual well. So there was 1, 2, 3, I think 4 wells that were put in.
So are we under a DEEP order, or is it?
It's not an order, it's just
we're doing
according to the regulations, but I don't believe there's an order. Because we followed all the regulations and Joe reported the spill, and so.
If we didn't do it, would we get an order?
Possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the 21,000, just to clarify, it's not to remove the.
It's to install the monitoring
tank,
wells and
right,
do the
so you're
testing
well,
wells.
just these monitoring pockets to hold the water.
We originally had some money in the budget to remove the tanks and a limited amount of money if we had a problem with some soil, to remove the soil, because you have to remediate the soil. So we had that funding already. It was just the groundwater had a little bit in it, and that's the part that.
So I'll make a motion, we approve request for funding number 1819-06 in the amount of $21,000. Is there a second?
Second.
So the only thing that's one other thing I wanted to say is these have particularly been somewhat problematic for the town when we remove these. So we have two. There are 2 more. One is being used at the country club. That was installed in probably 03, maybe it's 05, somewhere around there. And then there's one at this at Beecher School that is not being used, but is still in underground.
So
because they have gas.
So attorneys, we have these monitoring wells and they test positive.
Yeah, just the one did.
Well, if it continues to test positive.
So basically, you have to have 2 years of clean data before you can abandon the well. And I believe the process we're going to use is natural attenuation, which means you just keep monitoring it. Eventually, it'll dissipate.
Eventually, it'll stop.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't have, if it continues to test positive, we don't have an obligation to remove that tank and remediate the soil.
So with the tank's removed and the soil's removed. It's just the water. Yeah.
But do we have any other underground tanks?
Just we have
Beecher.
Let me clarify that. We have oil water separator tanks. There's 2 at the fire department. There's 2 at the public works facility, and there's 2 tanks for the wash bay at the public works. Those are all underground tanks, but they're not fuel tanks. They're oil water separator tanks.
We had an issue over there.
Yeah.
At one point in time, small, relatively small.
It was pretty small, yeah.
So where's this money coming from? I'm sorry.
Contingency.
Contingency.
Yeah.
Did we do a motion in a second?
Yes.
Thank you.
We didn't vote.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions or anything? Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks. Thanks. Another one. Line item transfer number 1819-07 in the amount of $6,238. It's a transfer within a department, correct?
Correct.
Yep. Okay, this is to replace a police vehicle that had been totaled in an accident. These funds, in addition to the insurance proceeds, would allow the purchase of a new police vehicle. It's gonna say $6,000 for a new vehicle. Wow. But it's just to cover the difference between insurance and so we'll get a new vehicle.
And that's one less they'll request in their budget.
That's good. Okay.
Am I reading this line item transfer form?
It's a mistake on it. It should say
It's a
62.
mistake on it.
Yeah, it should say 6238 is the total amount. Yeah.
Oh yeah, versus 5,000.
Right.
Good pickup. Someone want to make a motion to approve this? Is there a second? Any other questions or discussion?
So what did they not use this money for?
There were defibrillators and radios that they had some money remaining in the budget, so that they, when they requested the budget, the price came in less than.
favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Request for funding number 1819-08 in the amount of $10,280. This is a request due to the shortage of funds in the fire department repair and maintenance building account. There's a memo in your packet from Chief Rowland.
Do we know how old that hot water heater is?
It's an original to
That
the
would've
building,
been
I'm assuming, right,
original.
Dwight?
It was installed in '08.
Oh, wait.
With-
So 10 years.
with the-
10 years already, wow,
10 years old.
okay.
That would be long.
Just to get the discussion started or finished, I will make a motion to approve funding number 1819-08 in the amount of $10,280.
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
I think it lasts like 20 years.
Now if you have 50 guys.
Is that it? Did I get them all?
Tony, what's our contingency?
Yeah,
After those transfers,
Yeah.
153,
153,
720, yep.
to last us until
So-
next June,
Right.
Yeah.
No snow,
through the winter.
Just hope we don't get a lot of snow.
no snow,
Snowing Thursday.
not having it.
So other than storms, is there
Sorry.
anything other foreseeable, anything else
No,
you see out there?
nothing I'm aware
at
of.
this point?
The, well,
You
the,
never know.
No, I know, I just.
the only other item is,
Something
well, the only other item is the Woodbridge Board of Ed. I mean, I'm not sure where
Which
they're
is
going
only-
with that, but that's 205 according to tonight's.
What's the, just out of curiosity, more curiosity than anything, what's
Yes.
the process, or is there potential, this was a funding request for the boiler,
Mhm.
as opposed to a line item transfer out of the budget to see if there's some money that they can take out of their budget? And
You could, I mean, that's certainly another way to do that. At this point, it's early in the year, I'm not sure he's prepared to, to do that, but sometimes the Board of Finance will, they've done in the past with a request like this, they'll table it and wait until,
See if they can
see if they
recover
can
the money somewhere.
recover it from their own budget. With acknowledging that if they can't, then they would eventually fund it.
That's an
And it's
option.
worked in the
So we
past.
fund it now, cause they need a hot water.
Right, so
We
it's in a way,
fund it now, if they have money at the end, they pay it
right,
back.
essentially, yeah,
Essentially.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Did we vote?
I don't know.
Yes, we did.
You did? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we finished.
Okay. Item 9D is bid award for the transfer station scale. We discussed this a little bit.
Yep.
You wanna take it
So
any
there were
further?
4, so you could see there were 4 bids. 3 were the traditional method, and the 4th was with the load cell that we discussed. And you could see the low bidder on the traditional method was also the bidder for the load cell, which was Reliable Scale. And they came very highly recommended by several towns.
What they put in 2 bids, one significantly
One was a
higher than the
traditional
other?
method, and the other one had a load cell, which is the lifetime
So the
warranty.
82075 includes the load cell?
Correct.
That's what it boils down to.
That's correct, yeah.
So it's your recommendation that we go with
Yes.
that one? Okay.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we award the bid for the transfer station scale to Reliable Scale and Systems in the amount of $82,075. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussions? All in favor?
So,
Aye.
Whoops, go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't
I'm
make
sure I'm in
sense.
favor, but what's the funding?
It's from the project is from we have to replace the second compactor, one of the compactors. We have some money in there, and so I think the idea here is to fund the scale, get that whole process moving, get some revenue from the scale,
And worry about the.
and then do the compactor and
Potentially
the.
that'll help fund.
Correct,
We
yeah.
have one compactor already, right, that's
There's
okay?
2.
And
One,
the
they're
other
both
one-
okay, I mean.
They're both okay?
Yeah,
All
but
right.
one of the, they need to be replaced.
Yeah,
Eventually.
Eventually, yeah. So we're hoping the revenue generated from the scale will help to then fund that.
okay. Thank you.
Just as a general question, do we get performance warranties with these things? I mean, we've had so many items done so many projects done in town which have been disappointing in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think of the high school, you think of Beecher Road School.
Well, I know as part of our process, something like this, He makes it clear on here about,
You have a lifetime warranty though.
yeah. But generally, we try to.
It's rat proof.
Yeah.
He pointed that out. He pointed that out to me.
But along those lines, is there any formal tracking of any of this? Do we maintain any kind of record of?
We have a
when we
record within
project?
each project file.
Okay.
Of it, but we don't have like a database or anything. It's just within each project file. If something goes wrong, we have a warranty with that.
Okay. Item
And we didn't vote on that.
9E.
Did we vote on that?
Did you vote on that?
We didn't vote on that. We need to-
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Gosh. Item 9E is the bid award for road salt. Big surprise, Morton Salt. They always
Yeah,
come through.
and we didn't get any other bids
What
this
did
we
we
year.
know
pay
other
last year,
bids?
Sean?
We did
68, I think.
68.
Yeah,
Let's come down.
it came down, yeah.
So this is a town open bids for sodium, for the rock salt for the roads, and they got 2 responses. One was a no bid, and Morton Salt bid a price of 60.59 per ton. Last year was 68, so that's a good thing. And because we only have really essentially 1 bid, Tony recommended we go with Morton Salt at 60.59 per ton, so I'll make that motion. For a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussions on this?
Do we, kind of way out maybe, but Bethany and Orange have to use salt too, right? Have we ever thought of combining a purchase with them? And is there a volume?
Is there a big difference?
Is there a volume impact to the pricing at all? Do you know?
I don't know, but we can certainly look into
Yeah,
that for
Might be
next year, yeah.
something to look into.
Yeah, yeah.
Good idea.
That's a very good idea.
Consolidation
Yeah.
of services.
Right along my lines, that's great.
Bigger volumes.
Good thought. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I finally remembered to do that. Okay, is Simon coming?
He's feeling under the weather, so I'm his representative.
Okay, would it be okay if we, before you guys did your report, if we did move to, the
No,
appointments?
definitely.
Item 15, so you don't have to sit there any longer, Lynn.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Never heard that.
Thank you.
Well, it's
Okay.
nice not to have the phone ring and people
I understand.
jumping on you.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead if that's okay, even though you're welcome to stay after we do this, but, this is open meeting. Other than executive session, you're more than welcome to be with us. It was brought to my attention by our town clerk that, a prehistorian is defined as an expert in prehistory, the span of time before recorded history, for the invention of writing systems that made recorded history possible. More broadly, it refers to all the time preceding human existence and the invention of writing. Simon has been doing a lot of research over the years, and he's very interested in this, and he has agreed. And so I hereby appoint Woodbridge resident Simon Donato to be the Woodbridge's first town prehistorian, not historian, prehistorian. And I want to thank Simon. I was going to thank him in person, but I'd like to thank you, and you can convey our thanks for agreeing to serve in this new role. And I have a citation on this date, be it known to all the residents, that I, Beth Heller for Selectmen, do hereby appoint Simon Donato, Town of Woodbridge prehistorian. He's got to come in sometime and do a photo with me with this.
Oh.
Okay?
Yes.
So, but I will give you this tonight.
And on behalf of Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have any comment on behalf of Simon?
Oh, do I have any
Yes.
comments?
Thank you.
He says thank you.
Well, and he says thank you.
Thank
and,
you.
No, he's very proud to do this. He said, I think this town needs a prehistorian because he goes back to and he's even said it, the last ice age. So that's when he says prehistorian,
Wonderful.
that's what he's talking
It's
about.
exciting.
And he started this when he was 6 years old.
Wow.
His feet were in the flats, Woodbridge number 2. Or are we number 1?
We're all one Woodbridge. So I gotta go with that.
But his
Thank
feet
you.
his feet were planted in the fields when he was 6 years old.
Wow.
And he caught the fire. And let me tell you something, he has not stopped.
I know.
So
It's amazing and wonderful, and we thank him so much.
So does he have a portfolio of?
well, he wrote the book. I don't know if you're familiar with the little pamphlet book that he wrote about Woodbridge. And he's starting another one, but this one is going to be a picture book of the past.
That's better for me.
Okay, and he's like, every night he comes home and you should see the pictures I got, and that's great, you know. I have this huge album on my table, loaded, and I'm telling you, if anybody's addicted to anything, he's addicted to this history,
Wonderful.
and he loves the town.
We're lucky to have him, and please tell him I hope he feels better too.
Oh, I shall.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for popping in. And not on the agenda because it's a surprise. I am doing an official citation, be it here known that Beth Heller offers her sincerest congratulations to Patricia and Joe Crisco as they celebrate their 60th wedding anniversary on December 13th, 2018. So I have it's a surprise. Thank you. So you'll give that to Pat tonight. Wow.
You were 10 years old.
Whoa. Yeah, you were 10 when you got married. That's it. Yeah. So thank you for that, guys. Thank you so much for letting me do those two fun things. And now we'll jump back up to item 10, which is the Assistant Administrative Officer's Report. Betsy?
So if you remember last month we talked about the auction that the town participated in Orange, and that was held on Friday. And the town sold 4 vehicles, a ladder truck, a pickup truck, an old backup plow truck, and an animal control vehicle. And the town made $3,950 from the sale of those 4 items.
Thank you.
Slightly more exciting to me is the beautification plan that you all have in your packets. So that has been shopped around to the various boards and commissions that have some sort of interaction with the items in the plan. It's been before CUPA, Human Services, the Library, and Recreation. And as you can see, I've added a narrative to the plan, so it's not just a bulleted list anymore. And my hope is that the plan could be used as supporting documentation for any grants that might help us accomplish some of the items in the plan. Excuse me. You also notice that I've gone through and identified funding needed for some of the items, and you'll see some of those funding requests in the capital budget requests that come before you later this month. Excuse me.
We need to approve this. Would you like us to approve it? Okay. Did you guys all have a chance to review it, or would you like to?
I did, but I don't know if I'd
Okay.
rather spend a little more, personally, a little more time before
Sure.
we
So we could
approve
put it,
it.
we could put it off as well.
But I have a question, I mean, what, I mean, I know what it is, but the purpose of this is some strategic plan to beautify, you know, the area here and so forth. But there's a lot of things on here, and some of which are would require significant funding.
Right, absolutely.
Which does not exist.
Right, that's correct.
So by approving this, what are we really approving?
So this is
A
actually
wish list, or?
Yeah,
I mean,
this is separate from the budget.
Right.
The way that I'm seeing this, and Beth, tell me if you agree, is that this identifies a wish list, like you said, and then there will be a separate funding request that would either be approved or denied or pushed off down the road like any other normal budget process. But we've at least identified things that I think, and I've heard consensus from others, that would help improve the mood of the town center. And unlike a lot of other towns, we don't have a sort of centralized meeting place where people run into each other. And the goal is to create something similar to that.
Some of the items we can certainly do without funding, and clearly related to funding. I'm hoping grants will come in, or
Yeah, sometimes we have opportunities.
Right.
No, and I'm all for
right.
it conceptually,
I'm
but
not
the one
crazy
that jumps off the page at me is police expansion. I don't know what that means, and I know they've been looking for an expansion of their facility for a long time that we've pushed down. And
we have, and we
so,
could continue. It's just there as
I mean,
a
does this
placeholder.
mean we decided that we are gonna expand the police if we agree.
Personally, I would say not at this time, but it's a.
I just
wish
raised
list.
the issue because
Right.
once you approve this, someone's gonna say, oh,
Right.
you approved
No,
the
you're right.
police expansion.
Wasn't there a plan at one point in time to utilize space in the center to quote unquote expand the police department?
Yeah, part of it was where
But it's
the,
a big
when
project.
the,
Right.
when the rec center moved over,
Fitness moved out of
they,
there and
that plan's been kicking around before I was even, so it's gotta be over 6 years
I think it's
old.
dated
Way
2010.
more than that, since
Yeah,
when?
2010.
2010, yeah.
Okay.
8
So,
years.
and it was, you know, 5.5 million at that time. I hate to see what it is now, you know, what the plan was.
but from a
And I'm not saying I'm against it or for it, I'm just saying
yeah, no, I understand.
I hesitate to
Yep.
include that in a beautification plan. Because to me, that's not beautification, that's a significant capital
Well,
project and so
we
forth.
could take it out.
And that's just one thing I saw, which is
Okay.
why I thought
Do
maybe.
you wanna give it another month to, we could keep on the agenda for December and then, take a look a little bit further? How would that be?
Yeah, and people could send me their thoughts on
Yeah.
any
Okay.
other edits.
Because I like the idea
Yeah.
myself.
Okay.
I just hate the idea that I hate it, that money, it's just right now, it's tight. But if we can come up with things or funding opportunities become available, we have a blueprint, but
You spend money on what you need to spend on.
Yep.
Spend it on.
that's it. Okay, so we'll just table that. We'll get it on there for December again.
Sure.
That's okay with everyone.
The map that comes with it is just, again, an illustration of what's outlined in the plan.
Yes, it's a very inartfully done concept.
Yes.
Yes.
It works. So, and,
Kind of okay.
beautification,
The new garden actually did happen.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
that's exactly.
If you had a
what I was gonna
chance
say.
Yeah.
to look.
I'm very
Looks
impressed
good.
with the
Yeah,
fact that that
the
happened.
new garden happened, and that was a funding, that was just taken care of with
I owe
someone
someone money, but
who passed away, and it was just, they donated the funds for
I
that.
owe $125.
Those were donated funds.
No, it's all.
Okay,
So
thanks,
I've
Betsy.
broken out a tree donation plan that was originally part of the beautification plan. Over the summer, I think it was, many of the trees along Center Road at Fitzgerald were removed by the state as part of UI's vegetation management plan. They were growing in and among or directly below the power lines. And so the state gave permission for those trees to be removed. And Beth asked me to look into how to replace those trees without interfering with the power lines and creating a similar problem 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And as I started looking at what our tree needs were in addition to Fitzgerald, talked with several people about how to go about doing this. And this concept is based off of the bench donation program, and the format of this is very similar. And the thought is that we could fit 18 trees in the spot where those trees were removed from Center Road. And I consulted with Adam Parsons on which trees would best go in that area. And he's chosen trees that will not be tall enough to interfere with the wires. They flower at different times of the year, so it would be a nice changing display. And it would also provide some of the visual buffer between the people who are on the walking track and the traffic. At the same time, we had to take down 3 trees on Meeting House Lane by the green. And these were really large, mature trees that provided nice shade for folks at the concerts and the movies on the green. And so he suggested we replace those 3 trees with salt-resistant shade trees, and he suggested 5 different species that he thought would look nice. So the idea is that, similar to the benches, we ask residents who feel strongly about trees or want to create a legacy for their family to donate the funds for these trees, and on the green they'd be able to choose among those 5 for the 3 spaces that are available. And
So basically, you donate the money, the town approves it, and approves the species of the tree.
Right, so we've
And
got these
plants it
species
and
among,
does all this,
to
right?
choose
And
among.
so basically,
Yes.
you're funding a tree.
Exactly.
You're not,
Right.
yes.
Do you have any numbers on what these trees would cost?
So Adam and I, we tried to get numbers on this, and it was really hard to do at the end of the planting season because it's hard to call around nurseries and get prices from them because they're out of stock on a lot of things. So our hope is we'll get better pricing come very early spring when they start to get their stock in.
Mm.
But
That's interesting.
I hesitate to guesstimate, but I don't think it would be significantly more than the dogwood that was planted out on the green recently, and that was $750.
Symphony, yeah.
And that was a sizable tree for a new tree, so this could be in that area, could be a little cheaper.
How about the Copper Beech at the library?
So that one I think I have a donor lined up for, but again, the pricing is really gonna depend on what's in stock come spring.
It's a significant tree for that property.
It
It
is.
would be expensive. It would be tens of thousands of dollars.
Well, we probably wouldn't plant something quite that large, but it's not a, you know.
We could get a bidding war between Bob Bush and Bill.
Yeah, I want to fix them, I'm not getting that.
Well, it's just at an
Not working
auction,
anymore.
so.
I'm raking in the shed.
Yeah. So if this is something that you all think makes sense for the town, I'd love to get this on the website and hopefully start generating some interest to see if we can replace those trees.
I don't see how
You
it
gotta
works.
put figures in, right?
I'm sorry?
You gotta put figures in.
Well,
At some point.
right, it's hard to ask people to donate when I can't give them the pricing, right? So I'm hoping to have that early spring.
Sounds like a great idea.
So the consensus is to go forward with
Go
this.
for it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay,
Yeah,
Should.
why
that's
not?
great. Okay, thank you.
All right.
And last.
And then lastly is the application for use of the town green, and this is something that we talked about last month. As you all are aware, more and more organizations are requesting to use the green for different events. And the hope is that this application would make the process much more administrative and would save time on their end and save time at the board level. I would work with the applicants, there's a checklist that they would go through, and then I would be able to bring the checklist to the board and have the board decide yes or no.
Did everyone have a chance to review it?
I did.
Did you review this, Jerry?
Yeah, I thought it was good.
I did not.
You did not?
You did, Jerry.
Oh, I did?
Yes.
Okay, I did, I took my,
Okay.
I did.
So
David has a
I have
question
a
or a
question.
comment?
So, yeah,
Sure.
about halfway down, there's an approval
Front
application.
front page?
Page one, yep.
Page one, thank
Talking
you.
about the
$60.
cost to rent the greens, that's $60 an hour,
Right,
and we will have a staff member there?
that's what we've been doing now.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
so this just formalizes that.
Yep.
I don't know if we have any other town property that we allow people to use, but I know sometimes
The
they
Fitzgerald.
use the Fitzgerald
Yeah.
or the Ake, whatever we call over by the firehouse, or the old firehouse. I mean, shouldn't this be,
Oh, the Grove.
shouldn't
The
this, the
Grove,
Grove?
the
The
Grove,
Grove,
yeah.
it's
It
the
could-
Christmas tree.
I could
But
change
shouldn't this
it.
just be town property?
Town
use
property,
of
yeah,
town
yeah,
Yes.
good
property?
idea, yeah.
Could be generic.
Generic.
Yeah.
And Jerry, I'll talk, I have a question on the insurance.
Will that apply? Okay.
No, that's right.
Will that apply to charitable organizations like the Boy Scouts,
Yes.
charging $60 an hour for a fire staff?
Because we're paying for staff to be there to help set up, make sure everything goes okay, and to clean up at the end.
Traditionally, there's never been staff from the town at those events.
Well, at the dog park fundraiser a couple weeks ago, there was
Mhm.
at the food truck festival held by the daycare center. There was. Those are the two most recent events that I can think of.
Mhm.
So events as opposed to like the tree sale that the Boy Scouts do, right?
Right, and so at these events, there was food on site, so
Right.
there was garbage being generated. Right, I imagined something like
Well, I'm
the
wondering if
wreath sale
there's
would be
gonna be an
different.
exception for, other uses.
Right.
Well, I didn't look at this
You know,
all that
This was
carefully.
specific to the green, and now it's kind of morphing into town
Right.
property. So if you would use, say, the triangle in front of the firehouse for
Mm.
something.
I guess it depends upon what the use is, though.
Right, if you're having
You know.
a holiday tree sale, the sort of traffic and trash generated is gonna be different than if you're having food trucks on site.
Right. So, just,
So where is the part
just so
about
I'm
the six-
clear, what are we going to do with this? Application for use of Woodbridge Town property
Property?
or green?
60 per, yeah.
I think David's point's well taken.
Yeah.
If you're gonna put it, if everyone's
Says it
using
back.
this and everyone who uses it has to pay $60 and everyone is using it, then that will change
Yeah.
what we've been doing historically.
Right.
I mean, the Boy Scouts
Keep
typically
it to the
raise
green.
about $1,800. They
Why
have
don't we
about
just
5
keep it at the
flower
green for
sales.
now?
Yeah.
Their overhead's gonna be $12.50, or so.
Yeah, I don't think we should include the Grove because people don't use that for events.
Yeah.
What about the Fitzgerald?
Well, wait, hold on.
What
The
about
most
the Legends?
important part of
The
this
green
thing
now.
is the insurance.
Yeah,
When they're using town property, the most important thing is the insurance. The $60 is easy to fix. It could be if applicable,
If
it could be
applicable, that's
a
all I was
thing on
thinking.
here that when you get your approval, you either have the $60 or you don't. I mean, it still has to be all town property. If you're using town property, you have to tell us what you're using it for. You have to get approval, and you have to provide insurance.
I agree. I guess
Right.
the thing is, if you're gonna say if applicable, then you have to designate what
What's
is
applicable.
applicable.
Right.
You know, so if we're saying.
Well, right, or you could just say, you could say the $60 fee may apply for this purpose depending upon the use requested, and then when you get your approval, you say, well, because you're having food vendors, et
Right.
cetera, it's $60.
plus,
Could-
and
could
that's
we
what-
make
Because
a-
you're selling Christmas trees, it's no $60.
could we legally make a comment about, upon approval, the applicant shall pay a fee of $60 an hour? There was something like, this may be, deferred or voted on by the Board of Selectmen to not have to pay, for example, if it's,
Could be waived.
Well,
Could
you
be
just, yeah,
waived,
you just,
thank
but you don't even have to set it up as an absolute
Right.
in the first instance. You can just say, there may be a depending upon the use
Town
requested.
reserves the right to
There may
charge.
be, the town reserves the right to charge
all right, and we'll make
$60 an
it,
hour.
we'll make it,
We can make that change.
event specific.
Right.
Okay, all right. So then it'll go back to the Woodbridge Town property, correct?
I think so.
And then there's places in here that have to change it, green applicants and things like
So
that.
that means we're gonna have to vote on every application.
We do
No,
now.
well,
We do,
We do now.
Well, in terms of charging the fee, are we gonna charge
Yeah.
the fee or not gonna charge the fee?
yeah.
well, we approved
Well,
approved, now what we're gonna do is get this application, we're gonna look at it, and we're gonna approve the use in a $60.
In a
fee.
sense,
Betsy's
it'll save
doing-
us time,
Betsy-
because usually we have them come and they're da-da-da,
Right.
and
Am I-
this is all the, Betsy has gathered
Yeah.
by doing this form,
Betsy-
all the information is already here
Right,
But this,
in front of us, and we'll get this ahead of time. Go ahead.
But
For all intents and
this is an
purposes, vet-
application for the Woodbridge Town Green.
No,
not anymore.
not anymore.
No, what I have in my hand is Woodbridge Town Green.
We can change
Yeah.
it.
We can
Change it to
it.
the-
We just changed it.
But we're gonna change it to the use of town property.
And the way I'm understanding this is Betsy's more or less vetting all of this prior to, so when we come in, we're gonna know if there's a $60.
Whenever there's a request, we discuss it.
Right, so we don't have to ask the applicant each time, you know, do you have this, do you have that?
Okay, so
Fire and police.
we have farmland that we're gonna rent out. Are we gonna charge the farmer $60 an hour?
Let's take that as it comes out.
I'm just saying, you're opening up all of these possibilities where before it was very narrow.
Mhm.
I don't
I'm just
agree.
bringing it
But we
up.
okay.
Bring it up.
What was narrow?
Right.
Well,
Farmland.
Town Green, now, farmland, you're gonna charge a farmer $60 an hour?
We have a separate.
No, we have a
program.
lease
We
agreement.
have a separate program.
It's a totally separate legal agreement that
Alright.
covers that.
All right. That
But when some resident or non-resident, whatever, wants to use town property, we need to know what they're doing, how they're doing it, do they have insurance?
It's reasonable, yeah.
Well, it can't be just the green here.
It's,
More or less formalizing the existing process.
it's
not
3
changing.
pages of data that Betsy will have for us before we approve it. We sit here for
And-
10 minutes with an applicant and ask them these questions.
And often you're asking them questions that I've already
Correct.
asked them, so
Right.
it's,
And we also have insurance requirements spelled out ahead of time,
Right.
which Joe
Right.
said is the most important thing.
Well, to me,
You're right.
but
2 hours.
we also, some uses we ask people, like road races, for instance. You know, have you talked to the police, have you talked to the fire? There should be something on here, if the use is such that they need sign-offs from police and fire, that,
well, I do
That
include
they
in
get.
here that, the chief of police could decide if the event requires protection, and if so, they would be paying,
okay.
the applicant would be paying that. And then there's also something about if they're planning to put a tent or other kind of structure on there, building code applies to that, and both Terry and the fire marshal would need to sign up on that.
Right, so at that point in time, when we get this, we have all the sign-offs, we have the insurance,
You
it's
have all
very
the
easy to do.
information, right.
It's easy peasy. We'll get these before we have a meeting, so people can look at them before the meeting.
So Joe, I just jotted down a sentence in lieu of what's there. The town reserves the right to charge an event fee to cover cost of staff and other town-related expenses to be determined solely by the town.
Right,
So that
and we
would
make
just
that as part of the approval, you either pay it or you
You
don't.
don't pay the rate. Exactly.
Okay. Good. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thanks
yeah,
so
just
much.
one other thing, on the wear and tear of the green, are we going to, it says, this is a little unclear to me, applicants may be required to pay over and above the prepaid fee to cover additional costs. Is that gonna be, a fee paid upfront to cover additional costs, or as needed to remediate the problems that they cause?
Well, it says
That would
any
be
and all
after the
damage
fact.
caused by, so,
Only if,
caused by the event. So it's if they, you know, make a mess.
Does it make more
After
sense
the
to get
event.
a damage deposit and then refund it?
You really wanna make this different.
Jeez.
Hey, you ever,
Well-
you ever have rental property?
There for like
Oh, there you go,
That's
that's
not
experience
fun.
speaking.
Actually, it's not a bad idea.
Damage
It's not a bad idea. You know,
Does that
most of my
become
ideas are
a
good. Some of them
nightmare?
are whackable.
Wait, let's ask our finance director who.
Would you say that we reserve the right to, I mean,
would
could
say
be
reserve-
another,
We
dis-
can say that, we can say that.
We
You
can
know,
say, in
based on the nature of the event, if we feel we have to do that?
Yeah, I
See,
don't think
there's
it's a
gonna be
bad
horses
idea.
trickling.
Yeah, it's a pretty good idea.
Okay, yeah, all
It
right,
goes
we'll do
without
that.
saying that you can do that anyway, but it's not a bad idea to
Right.
put it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you're not busy collecting fees
Right,
each time and
and
having,
refunding
I just
them,
see,
right.
see the work for you.
On the insurance part of this, I'm not sure the umbrella, is that your?
Well, that was my question, for the umbrella, you have excess liability, it's really excess liability, because you're only getting general.
But for small events and small groups, I don't think.
We should take them both out.
We should just take it out.
But if you leave one in, it should be excess liability.
I think we should
And
take
the
them
umbrella
both,
should
I
be
think we
out.
should take them both out and just have the.
1 million.
Just a general 1 million
Yeah.
coverage, yeah, okay.
Which is the general liability each occurrence?
Yes.
That's it?
And
Well, no, you have the general
aggregate.
aggregate.
Those three things.
And the products as well, because you're selling
Yes,
food.
leave that in there.
The first three things, but not the last two.
Yes.
Right.
That's what I meant, yep, okay.
so how about I make these changes and bring this back
Right.
next month? We're probably unlikely to see many applications for use over the winter, so
Yeah.
we've got a little time.
That'd be great.
Okay,
Christmas tree sale is coming up.
Right.
They've already got,
they were,
they already approved.
You already
they're done,
approved it?
oh yeah. Yep, we did that. What, like, in, I don't know, summer, spring.
Yeah,
They were on top of it. Ted Pokowitz came to us.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
That's
We're
right.
writing on the rules.
I think
He
we
knew
also
there was gonna
approved a
be an
town banner in
application.
June of
You
next
did,
year.
you're right, yeah, right.
Okay, thank you. So there's no action appropriate. And thank you. That's it, Betsy? Thanks
That
for
is it.
everything. That
Thanks,
was really
Betsy.
great. Okay. Item, where are we? Number 11?
11.
Communication Director and Grants Writer Report. She doesn't know I'm gonna do this, but, I received a copy of a letter that, our Ms. McCreven earned CABE Certified Board of Education member designation. Very few other Connecticut Board of Education members have earned this prestigious honor. With your attendance at numerous CABE, CAPSS conventions, et cetera, you are to be this is a great accomplishment and you are to be commended. So I just wanna let the board know that.
Commendation, very
Good
good.
job. So, there's a press release apparently that was not attached to what, the copy that someone gave me, but, cause it was a photograph, but I don't know if the Board of Ed does a thing, but I just wanted to acknowledge that.
I hope it wasn't.
So I wouldn't let you in the packet this afternoon. Okay, with that, I will open it up to your Communication Director and Grants Writers Report.
Okay, I have a very brief update for you. So in your packet under correspondence tonight is the fully executed agreement between the town and the state of Connecticut for the Farmland Preservation Program, as you voted at the last meeting, to authorize the first selectman to sign.
That was the beginning of the ordinance committee's suggestion
Right.
until we take up the agricultural commission, so.
Right.
Yes, to
This
explore
was
all.
just so we could get off the,
Yes.
get going on this.
This
get
puts
them an
us
opportunity.
in line to be able to apply for funds as soon as possible,
Right.
should the need
Should some-
arise,
right.
if someone comes to us with farmland that could be
This
preserved.
doesn't take the place of an agricultural commission.
Right, and it would
Right.
necessitate a grant.
At this point, right.
And you would learn much more about that when that comes.
Correct.
So the Conservation Commission is our agent, if you will, for purposes of this. I haven't read the whole thing, but I see
Yes.
Conservation.
Yes, that was part of what was voted on at the last meeting.
It was, okay.
Okay, and then I also want to let you know, Beth and I also recently met with Laura Ferranti, who serves on both the Sustainability Ad Hoc Committee and as the chairman of CUPOP. We discussed with her the way the two committees possibly have some overlap and some common projects going forward. So we've asked that they begin to jointly meet for a few months. So both committees will notice their meetings. They will remain two separate committees, but they'll be meeting together so they can collaborate and see where that might go. You know, we're looking to see if they can merge at some point. We'll try it out and see how that works. And that would help our sustainability efforts to really become embedded in existing boards and commissions. As you know, the Sustainability Committee now is an ad hoc, and ad hocs usually have an end of some sort. They either become standing committees or they merge into existing committees, or they go away completely, which wouldn't be very sustainable. So accordingly, the first joint meeting of Sustainability and CUPOP will take place Monday, November 26th, and I hope to be able to share at your December meeting more details on sustainable CT actions we will be pursuing in order to try to earn that silver certification next year. And then, as Beth mentioned in her remarks, seems like hours ago at the beginning of the meeting, members of her team.
It was hours ago.
Well, it seems like many, many hours ago. I've been meeting too much lately. Yeah. Members of Beth's team here at Town Hall attended the CCM convention October 30th. Beth, Tony Genovese, Terry Gilbertson, and I. This is an annual opportunity for professional development for the staff and an opportunity to hear what other towns and municipalities are doing to innovate and meet challenges of local government. So we gathered information from vendors and workshop sessions that we attended on some hot topics, including, I will read off to you a few of them. Water intrusion in community facilities, how to avoid a public crisis and mitigate costs with proper evaluation and planning. Regulating marijuana use and sale in your town. Succession planning, are you ready for it? Cybersecurity best practices. Supervisor boot camp for employee leave issues. And then a couple of different sessions on shared services, what's working, what's not, and why around the state as municipalities and school districts seek to share services. And then promoting communication and cooperation between boards of education and local government. That's again on the note of sharing services. And then lastly, I want to share something that was a write-up in the packet of information that was presented to all the participants at the CCM. I happened to flip open and see a page where the town of Woodbridge was featured. So this is a little write-up on the our budget presentation. It says Woodbridge budget, second to none. And it was nice to see. This is a little acknowledgement. Yeah, very exciting. Tony didn't even know it was in there. I showed it to him today.
I didn't even know it was in there.
Thank you.
So that's it.
Okay.
It was a fun CCM convention.
Town council's report.
So, I have two very short items. The first one is I reported to you a couple of times at a couple of meetings about the subsidence issue on Warren Road in Woodbridge. There was the subsidence. There was a Crisco was responsible for obtaining a bond for homes in the Woodbridge, Westville area that suffered subsidence, which is a sinking, which was a common thing for many houses in Westville and also a few houses in Woodbridge. It's the sinking of the foundation because of improper foundations under the home. Woodbridge had, I think, two families that qualified, two homes that qualified for the grant for the money. One was came out that was qualified by the Department of Economic and Community Development, and the other one just sort of fell by the wayside and was never pursued. But the one that was actually vigorously pursued by the homeowner was 6 Warren Road, and the cost of the remediation of this home for the subsidence problem was in excess originally of $300,000, far more than the value of the fair market value of the home, and DECD said we will not give that much money for a house that is not worth, is worth significantly less than what it's gonna cost to fix it. There were doubts expressed by our building department whether it could in fact be fixed and the money might not be fruitful in terms of solving the problem for the homeowner. The state of Connecticut raised the issue of whether they were not certain that it really was a subsidence problem, that it was a result of some other foundation issues which were not covered by the grant. We had an expert, there was an expert that gave an opinion that in his opinion it was subsidence, so, but there was some disagreement among the state came back to us and said, while we can't entertain any applications to grant money to improve the house for the reasons I just stated, we would consider having the town purchase the property at the expense of the state of Connecticut at fair market value and give the homeowner the difference between whatever mortgage the person had with the equity in the property. And the town would then be responsible for demolishing the home because it's a sinking home. The state would pay for the cost of the purchase of the property to the homeowner by the town, as well as paying for the demolition of the property, and the town would wind up owning whatever acreage the house was sitting on. So that's, and the homeowner has retained an attorney who's been in constant contact with me. Obviously, they're very interested in this, and they would be interested in the second proposal where the town would buy the property through the grant that is given to us by the state. The state is requiring one appraisal that the town would have to hire an appraiser to do, because they want to determine fair market value, not based on the assessment. We tried to argue that you can just take the assessment, add 30% to it, and you have fair market value. They said no, they wanted an appraiser. It didn't have to be an MAI appraiser, which would be very expensive. And based on what the appraisal is, the town would evaluate how much money it feels that it could give the homeowner, whether they can actually go forward with this concept, which is just a concept at this time. It's not a done deal, but it is a concept. The homeowner is very interested in it. I've talked to an appraiser who is ready to do this for us. The cost of the appraisal will be paid for by the state out of the grant, so there's no cost at all to the town of Woodbridge, and it satisfies a homeowner who has a real significant problem. I'm not sure that this could be accomplished, but it is the last hope that the homeowner has, and since it is state money, I think the board has agreed that we should go forward as best we can. So I'm just presenting to you where we are. The appraiser, his name is William Esposito from Hamden. He does a lot of appraisals. I'm ready to engage him in behalf of the town so long as the board feels it is appropriate. His cost for his appraisal would be $400.
So it sounded like this was a concept developed that the state came forward with first.
Yes, they said that they can't.
But you're kind of hedging, and I know why, but is it because the state has just thrown it out there conceptually? They're not saying we will do what are they waiting for?
I've been talking to a deputy commissioner of the DECD, and he said he's discussed it with his boss, who is the commissioner of DECD, or the deputy commissioner of DECD. I don't know if it goes as high as the commissioner, but somebody very high up. And they've agreed that this is the appropriate way to proceed. They need final approval when they get the numbers from the Attorney General's office before they can do it, because it's a grant that the Attorney General has to approve. So that's why I'm saying it's not 100% done yet. They still need that extra approval, but they felt comfortable that they can get the approval because the house has a fair market value based on the assessed value of about $170,000. I think there's a mortgage, so the homeowner will get some equity out of it and solve a problem with the town. For whether it's good or bad, will be the owner of that property. And it's a property that is wet, it's flooded, it's right on Knowles Pond, it's off of Litchfield Turnpike.
So this subsidence is not related to the issues that they're having in the eastern part of the state where it was faulty concrete which was crumbling?
A different issue. This subsidence came up
There's
before
a
that.
fund, by the
That's
way.
a good point.
There's a state fund now for that crumbling.
Yes. These are not crumbling foundations, these are sinking homes.
Foundation.
Sinking into the ground. And it was common in Westville. There was an area in Westville that had a lot of it, and Pat Dillon, State Representative Pat Dillon, worked with Joe to get the money for the two towns. Right, Joe? Am I correct?
So
So Jerry, is there any action that we need to take at this point, or is it just?
I don't think we need
informational?
action, just sort of give me a nod that I can go ahead and order the appraisal, we get reimbursed, it's only $400, it takes us to the next level, the town is not obligated, we can always, say no, but if you say it's okay, I'll go to the next step.
Okay.
Done. That's easy.
Thank
The
you.
second issue is almost as short, and that is concerns 110 Luciani Road. That's the parcel that the developer has been started to build a lot. Started to build a house, started to do excavation on the lot. There was some drilling involved. There's some potential blasting that they had to do. It sits into a hill that has a lot of ledge. The neighbors, as you probably know, were very upset, appeared before Planning and Zoning Commission several times, vigorously expressing their opposition to this particular house. The developer stopped building. There is no structure there. There's just a lot of disruption to the topography of the land. And Beth was thinking of a way to try and help out the homeowners, and suggested that the town sell a portion of the property that the town owns, which is adjacent to this lot, to the developer, so the developer would be able to move the house away from a neighbor's house. The way it was originally planned, it was right up against the neighbor's deck, and very, very close to his house.
And also to the ledge.
And very
that
close
came
to the
down.
ledge, which
Yeah.
would require more
Right.
drilling and possibly blasting. This would move it away from the ledge, move it closer to the road, if they could acquire this piece of property.
Right. Before I went into negotiations with speaking to the Rolands and the homeowners, the neighborhood group, I told the board in executive session about this.
Right.
Just so that it was important, before I did that, I wanted you guys to know. So the neighbors, we met with them.
Well, Beth said that she wouldn't recommend to the Board of Selectmen unless the neighbors agreed with this plan. So Beth met with them, I didn't meet with them.
Tony
but
and I met with them.
This is the letter that we received.
So I just want you to have a copy of, they've decided they don't want us to go
They
ahead.
don't want us to do this, so
Which is fine.
you just should know that's the reason it's not being
I just
pursued.
wanted you to have a copy. So, that's that. That's it. Just wanted you to know.
So you wanna take a look at it, and if you have any comments?
That's
All
that.
right, so that's
We
that.
tried.
That's all I have.
But it says the builder plans to file legal action against the town.
Well,
Yes.
that's what they say in the
That's
letter.
what they say. We
Okay.
did not, well,
Okay.
That
Nope.
doesn't make it so.
right,
by
It
the way.
doesn't make it.
Correct.
Okay.
Just like
Yep.
newspaper articles.
right. Correct. I just wanted you to be up to speed on all of that. And
So
it's
the
public.
builder's permit has run out, the builder has to go back to
Yeah.
planning and zoning to get it reissued.
Right.
And we don't know what's gonna happen.
Right, but I just wanted to, we came up with this idea,
Okay.
give it a whirl, and they don't want us to do it, so that's fine. I just wanted you all to be aware, okay.
That's all I have.
Have I skipped anything? We were jumping all over the place, okay, so now comes the time in our agenda when we're going to go into executive session, but I have some comments first. Tonight, we will again discuss proposals related to the town-owned former Country Club of Woodbridge property. To summarize, we have currently 3 proposals. First one is from Insight Development Group, Brian St. Pierre. The second one is Fieldstone Village, Sunrise Hill Estates, Robert Sachs. And the third one is Brightview Senior Living, a gentleman named Steve Marker. When we conclude our executive session and return to public session, I hope to provide a further update in details for the public. So if you want to stay around, we'd love to have you, and we'll get as much as we can out to the public. So I will now entertain a motion pursuant to section 1-206 D for negotiations to move into executive session and invite Attorney Weiner and Tony Genovese into executive session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so stay tuned, sorry.
Can we just ask them questions?
Good to go.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Well, we discussed in executive session the 3 proposals that I mentioned to you. The third proposal with Brightview Senior Living is a proposal, as I had mentioned before, related to an assisted living facility with memory care unit, and it's, I believe, the feeling of the board at this time that we're not going to proceed with that proposal. You said I could say that, right? Yep. Okay.
You already did.
I already did. Oops. You know. So at this point, we have a proposal from Insight Development Group, Brian St. Pierre, who happens to be in the audience, and Fieldstone Village, which is Robert Sachs, which is also the Sunrise Hill. He will name it Sunrise Hill Estates. In reviewing the 2 proposals, unfortunately, we still have to get further information from the number 1 and number 2 proposals. So we're going to continue this on Wednesday, November 8th. No, I'm saying 28th, sorry, I'm so tired. We'll have a special Board of Selectmen meeting and continue. We're going to get some information from Brian, and we have some other questions to ask of Robert Sachs of Fieldstone, and then we will talk to them again and then come out of executive session. That meeting will probably be an executive session because it's more negotiations, see what they give us, and we'll give you what we can after that. But unfortunately, because we did not come to, we needed more information in order to negotiate, we can't make a vote tonight on what we're going to do going forward. So my apologies for making you stay, because I thought it was going to be, but I can't.
So that will be a public meeting, November 28th?
It'll open in public. We'll probably have some executive session as part of it, because it's more negotiations, which I love. No, and then after that we'll have a bless you. We'll have hopefully a public session at that point, but I can't tell you what we're going to do until we have it. So thank you for staying, and I'm sorry it's so late, but thanks for hanging in with us.
Thank you. May I ask one question?
Okay, guys.
Here's a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes.
Have Fieldstone presented their proposal to us yet?
No.
One of these
No.
meetings or
No.
No, they have not.
No.
Are you going to ask them to do that?
Yes, we're asking for more information first, because we haven't even gotten everything we need from them.
They've presented interest, but nothing in detail.
Right.
Brian presented.
He has.
He has.
He's been here. He's been here.
Just wondered if I missed it.
It's okay, not at all. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, in the.
Sorry, it was,
Thank you, adjourn.
Yeah. Let me write that down on my notes. Yeah.
happy Thanksgiving. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yeah,